Chapter 1061. In the bedchamber of the Yuji Palace. Under the watchful eyes of the imperial guards and masters, the leaders of the imperial court visited the still unconscious His Majesty. These days, the palace had never let down its guard. The crown prince knelt in front of the bed and combed his father's meridians. The noble concubines wept with sorrow in their eyes. Many of His Majesty's princes also knelt. They all had to act like sons. After all, in a traditional empire with a long history, filial piety was undoubtedly the most admirable quality. The imperial physicians and the officials of the imperial treasury also knelt, because His Majesty still had not woken up. His Majesty has been unconscious for 5 days. A sweet-sounding but dignified voice sounded in the bedchamber, revealing an irrepressible anger. The imperial hospital is full of talents, and there are many divine craftsmen from the divine artifact supervisor. A full 5 days is not enough for you to wake the emperor? The imperial physician and the prefect of the imperial treasury kowtowed together. We are incompetent. You are indeed incompetent. The voice became more and more intense. The Empress Dowager washes her face with tears every day. The country is in turmoil. The Crown Prince is inexperienced and not qualified to guard the country. The great empire is leaderless. The safety of the world depends on the emperor. You bear a heavy responsibility. If you can't repay the emperor's trust, you are more than incompetent. The entire bedchamber was shrouded in a low pressure of anger. The officials of the imperial hospital and the prefect of the imperial treasury were sweating profusely. They lowered their heads, feeling terrified and ashamed. The others present also held their breaths. The angry woman was the emperor's wife, the mother of the country, Her Majesty Empress. Legally speaking, she and her husband were the co-rulers and noblest people of the country. The mistress of the empire was angry because of her husband's coma and the incompetence of the imperial physicians. Everyone had to listen obediently. Her Majesty Empress had also reached the age of a tiger and a wolf. But with the treasures of the royal family and the maintenance of her beauty, she still looked like a charming, fair-skinned beauty. Her beautiful face and noble bearing made her the mother of the country. At this moment, her phoenix-like eyes scanned the people in the bedchamber. The mistress of the empire was trying to make her subjects understand her anger. She moved her gaze away from the pitiful imperial physician and the prefect of the imperial treasury and turned to a group of officials who stood silently. To be precise, it was a person's body. The former commander of war, Jia Ying, was now the current Shinsei, Sun Lang. He was wearing the uniform of a rank 1 general. Standing next to the mature, dignified, and even old and amiable officials of the empire, he looked very out of place. It was because he was too young. The grandsons of the old lords were probably even older than him. Also, compared to his colleagues around him, his expression was too lively. In such a solemn and dignified occasion, he actually maintained a relaxed expression with a smile on his lips and looked around. When everyone was worried about His Majesty's coma and the future of the empire, whether true or false, he did not even bother to put on an act. Her Highness Empress frowned slightly, revealing a trace of dissatisfaction. In her eyes, this young general looked very frivolous and not steady at all. It could be said that he had no hair on his mouth and was not reliable in his work. It was obvious that he lacked respect for imperial power. Not many rulers liked this kind of arrogant and condescending subject. Moreover, he was really too young and impetuous. How could he be a rank 1 official and govern the country? Only a mature, steady, and experienced leader could be wise and steady at the helm of the country. Letting a young man who was not even 30 years old become the head of the military officials was child's play no matter how one looked at it. But Sun Lang was still standing here. No one could question his qualifications. Because his rank 1 general uniform was embroidered with a gorgeous and flamboyant roar of a chelan, and his right chest was draped with a sword tassel. The assistant ministers of the Ministry of Rights had rigorously and pertinently assessed the contributions of this hero of Tianyuan. They had also chosen an exclusive Shinsei military ribbon for him to show his unparalleled military achievements. Every piece of jewelry represented a great victory that would leave one's name in history and shock the world. And this was a reason why Sun Lang could sit here leisurely, looking left and right. When Her Highness Empress caught a glimpse of his armor, a trace of gloominess flashed through her eyes. She found Sun Lang very unpleasant to the eye. Very unpleasant to the eye. In the Tianyuan era, Sun Lang and the mistress of the empire had basically no interaction, but the two of them had already become enemies. More than a year ago, Commander of War had been marked as Kia in the secret files of the Imperial Court and the Ministry of War. One of Her Highness Empress' nephews had taken a fancy to Shui Baochai, who was a widow, and went to the palace to beg Her Highness Empress to grant him a marriage. Her Highness Empress did not notice and casually agreed. Then she immediately summoned Shui Baochai to be a matchmaker. It should be noted that the war had just ended, and Sun Lang's halo had not yet faded away. There were still a lot of praises in the Imperial Court. They were very sympathetic to the Commander of War's experience, but the cover of the Great Desolate Mountain was too good, so they could not trace it even if they wanted to. Then this thing happened. An idiot relative dared to have designs on the widow of the Commander of War. He was simply riding on everyone's necks and taking a dump. As a result, Her Highness Empress suffered 360-degree dis from outside the Imperial Court, and even the Emperor was scolded badly by a group of furious ministers in the Imperial Court. The military generals, whose military power was slowly being reduced by the Emperor, took the opportunity to attack. They smashed the newly emerging group of relatives into pieces and took the opportunity to get back some blood. Empress's reputation in the Imperial Court also plummeted. The lustful Marquis was so scared that he fled the capital that night. However, on a dark and windy day, his whole family was killed. This case shocked the Imperial Court and finally ended quietly. Even Her Highness Empress's rage and vomiting blood could not change this fact. The internal guard shrank back. The three ministers pretended to be deaf and dumb, and even the Emperor intended to cover up this case. The identity of the murderer became a mystery from then on, but the grudge had obviously been formed. After all, Her Highness Empress was the motherly model of the country. How noble was her status? After being slapped so hard in the face, how could she just laugh it off? She deeply hated the military officials from outside the Imperial Court, and she hated Shui Baochai even more. Without that woman, so many things would not have happened later. Her nephew was killed, her dignity was lost, her reputation plummeted, and her face was thrown to the ground and trampled on by the officials from outside the Imperial Court. It was like a joke. Who could tolerate this? And Sun Lang was Shui Baochai's dead husband. Since he was still alive, it was natural that this karma should also fall on his head. This was reasonable. Sun Lang also thought so. So the first thing he did after returning to the capital was to pick a fight with the Copper Sparrow Terrace. The second thing he did was to kill the family members of Empress who were in charge of the business of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. The third thing he did was to secretly put the blame of the remnants of the Sky Demon on Empress's head. He wanted to strike first and gain the upper hand. A fight was definitely going to happen. Could it be that he was going to keep it for himself? The Emperor was not a good person. Based on the principle that people who did not belong to the same family would not enter the same family, Empress was definitely not a good person either. Thus, he had to strike first and gain the upper hand. Furthermore, the family had to be neat. Empress had to be His Majesty's companion. That was probably it. The grudge had been formed long ago. With Sun Lang's suspicious and decisive personality, after hearing about the cause and result of the Shui Baochai incident, he put Empress on his list of enemies. He completely did not believe that Empress would let the matter go. Since that was the case, there was nothing more to say. Since he had made a move, Empress would definitely not let the matter go. A cold light flashed through Empress's eyes. Today, the Empress Dowager was not present. Thus, she, as the current Empress, was the person with the highest status at this moment. Although she did not have any real power, she had a righteous status. Things like status were very useful. She could reasonably speak, express her position, and even use the power of imperial power to exert pressure. Reprimanding the imperial physician and the officials of the imperial palace was just an ulterior motive. It was to draw out the following words. The emperor was unconscious. It was indeed the incompetence of the imperial physician and the Sacred Weapons Directorate. Then, who was the incompetence of the murderer that had not been caught and brought to justice? She looked at Sun Lang. It just so happened that Sun Lang's gaze also looked over. The two people's gazes met, and invisible sparks collided in the air. Then, General Shansei threw a coquettish glance over. Empress's expression suddenly changed, and a nameless fire rose. She was the mother of the world, and the world's nobility was unparalleled. Everyone who saw her had to be respectful and reverent. This brat dared to be rude. Just as she was about to angrily scold Sun Lang, she saw this guy immediately put on a serious expression, but his eyes contained a provocative meaning. Go ahead and shout, report me, come on, come on. As expected of the ruler of the harem, Empress judged the situation and forcibly swallowed her anger. Just now, there was no second person to see that coquettish glance. Now that she spoke out, how could she convict a first-rank military general based on her words alone? Perhaps the other side's glib words would counterattack, and she would suffer a loss. She fiercely glared at Sun Lang, intending to warn him to wait and see. Therefore, the structure of the palace's struggle was really too small. Empress had lived in the depths of the palace for a long time, and what she had seen and experienced was the struggle within the palace. Everyone had to be cautious and overcautious when dealing with people. When attacking the enemy, they had to pay attention to not fall into the trap. When pushing out competitors, they had to consider how to win the favor of the Son of Heaven. This kind of restrained action was not the slightest bit magnanimous. It was just like how she had clearly been provoked by Sun Lang, but chose to swallow her anger for the time being. It was fine if you just backed down, but you still had to fiercely glare at him. Other than showing that you were strong on the outside but weak on the inside, what was the point? In comparison, her opponent was a master of the art of war who had fought countless battles against the enemies of the human race on the Tianyuan battlefield. Scheming against the enemy had already become an instinct. When she took a step back, Sun Lang would take 2 steps forward. On this side, Empress maintained her silence, but Sun Lang took the opportunity to press on. He said indifferently, "Your Highness, you have been glaring at me for a long time. May I know why? If it's because of my wife's treasure hairpin, I will not apologize. She has insulted the heroes of the Tianyuan Empire and deserved to die. Your Highness, as the mother of the nation, the focus of the court, and the motherly model of the nation, you should discipline your own family. If it's because of the sky demon at the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, I will not apologize. As soldiers, it is our duty to exterminate the sky demon. Even if they are relatives of nobles, we will not let them go easily. Your Highness, you have to respect yourself. You should know that the Tianyuan Empire has been fighting for decades, and the people of the world have suffered heavy casualties. What we are protecting is the Li dynasty, but... Empress finally could not stand it anymore. How dare you? She said sternly. How dare you, Sun Lang? How dare you speculate about me for no reason? Sun Lang said calmly, Your Highness, I am a boor. My words may be harsh, but it's better to talk things out than to be targeted behind my back. From what Your Highness has said, it seems that you do not blame me for those 2 matters. Your Highness is deeply righteous and self-righteous. Your Highness, I cannot do such a thing. Seeing that the 2 of them were quarreling, the princes looked at each other. The crown prince stood up awkwardly. The important officials were silent, and the atmosphere in the bedchamber became very awkward, because the Empress Dowager was not here. On one side was the mother of the nation, and on the other was a powerful official of the foreign court. When the 2 of them quarreled, no one could stop them, even with the rank and status of the people present. After a while, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince braced himself and persuaded, Mother, General, before Father, please do not make a ruckus to avoid alarming him. Please calm down. Empress glared at the Crown Prince. It must be known that Jiansheng was not her biological son, and the Empress usually did not like this son. Now that she was arguing with Sun Lang, this little brat actually did not take sides, and instead asked her to calm down. What kind of joke was this? I am your imperial mother. Oh, imperial mother. Even if you become the emperor, you have to call me mother. Now that I'm being bullied by this domineering foreign official, you're not moved? Bastard. She frowned and vented all her anger on the crown prince. After all, it was natural for Empress to scold the crown prince. Your father stood against the opinions of the masses and made you the crown prince. How much kindness is as heavy as a mountain? Now that he has been assassinated by a thief and is unconscious on the bed, you inherit the will of the emperor and govern the country. What can you do? Filial piety is the most important thing in the world. Have you caught the murderer who tried to assassinate His Majesty? The crown prince had no choice but to kneel and kowtow. Mother, please calm down. Your son is incompetent. His Royal Highness had no choice but to ask her son questions about his father. Empress said sternly, Incompetent. Incompetent. Since you know you are incompetent, why are you the crown prince? And all of you. Empress pointed at the foreign officials and said in a sharp tone, all of you are standing here in such a dignified manner. Don't you have any responsibility? The officials all frowned slightly. They were all outstanding people of the present age. They were first-rank officials and had unparalleled talent. How could they endure a woman shouting in front of them? How could they allow a woman to criticize the important matters of the foreign court? What was there to shout about? But that was Empress after all. Moreover, they were in the palace right now. Everyone was a person of status, so how could they openly argue with Empress? That was very undignified. Therefore, their eyes involuntarily glanced at Sun Lang, revealing this meaning. Old Tai, screw her. But Sun Lang ignored these expectant gazes. He muttered to himself and looked at Empress thoughtfully. For some reason, he felt that there was something wrong with this woman. Acting up at this time, what did she want to do? Chapter 1062. The art of war was deceitful. Therefore, when marching and fighting, one had to be cautious. The commander-in-chief and general controlled the life and death of the army. They had to be responsible to both the emperor and the soldiers under their command. Therefore, being cautious and meticulous was the most important quality. Sun Lang undoubtedly had this quality. Not only was he cautious, but he was also suspicious. His special life experience made him unwilling to easily trust anyone, especially when the other party was the emperor's old lover. Thinking about it carefully, Empress's anger was too strange. It would be fine if she took the opportunity to make a scene. After all, she was the mother of the nation. All of her glory, splendor, wealth, and prestige came from her husband. Even worse, the crown prince appointed by the emperor was not her biological son. If her husband died, it was hard to say how much kindness and respect she, the fresh and hot Empress Dowager, will be able to obtain from the new emperor. Therefore, she was probably one of the people in the imperial palace who wanted the emperor to wake up the most. Under these circumstances, it was reasonable for her to angrily scold the imperial physician who did not treat the emperor well. But the problem was that she seemed to have an ulterior motive. Showing hostility to Sun Lang seemed reasonable. After all, the two of them had old grudges. The matter of Shui Baochai could not be resolved. Later, there was the basin of feces at the Copper Sparrow Pavilion. Based on these reasons, it was reasonable for Empress to dislike the Shinsei general. But she even scolded the officials. And you all, standing here in such a dignified manner, don't you have any responsibility? These words were too unpleasant to hear. It was equivalent to doubting everyone's professional integrity and personality. The key was the identity of the people she was scolding. The Empress was usually very dignified and powerful in the palace. Her methods were outstanding, and she used both kindness and power. Usually, when she wanted to beat a powerful eunuch or a favored concubine, she only needed to give a few words of advice as if nothing had happened, or just a few words of advice, and the other party would anxiously kneel down and beg for forgiveness. Because she was the indisputable ruler of the inner palace, everyone had to act according to her mood. But the problem was the people she was scolding didn't need to care about her feelings at all. Everybody on the spot was a top-tier official in the imperial court. They were the pillars of the country that ruled the country together with the emperor. They were either famous and well-respected talents or war maniacs who slaughtered devils on the Heaven's Origin battlefield not long ago. Even the emperor had to treat them with respect. Everybody had a temper, not to mention the giants of the Imperium. Who would be willing to be Empress' punching bag? Although they didn't say anything, they must be very dissatisfied. In other words, Empress had offended all of these ministers. There was no reason, and he didn't get any benefits. Was this woman crazy? Sun Lang did not think that the current Empress would lose her mind to this extent. Was he instigated, tempted, or instigated by someone? He pondered in his heart. The other party was Empress. How noble was her status? Who exactly was the person who could manipulate her actions? What was his goal? While Sun Lang was pondering, Empress's performance continued. After the woman cursed, her eyes turned red and she cried. It was said that tears were the sharpest tool a woman could use against a man. Moreover, it was the mother of the country who used it. Its power was really amazing. She cried and said, "You only care about fighting for power. No one cares about His Majesty's injury. No one cares when he gets better. Do you want His Majesty to never wake up?" His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who was about to say something, was so scared that he knelt on the ground again. The eunuchs, maids, and guards also knelt on the ground one after another. Even the expressions of the leaders, who were extremely shrewd and calm, changed slightly. These words were really too serious. They could only bow and say, "We are afraid." Only Sun Lang was still standing very straight. He looked very upright, especially in the environment where his colleagues were bowing in fear. He stood there as if to say, "Yes, that's what I think." Empress said gloomily, "General, are you not afraid?" Sun Lang said indifferently, "I have a clear conscience. Why should I be afraid? I have joined the army from Tianyuan, fought against the Sky Demon, defended the country, and saved the country. I have an indomitable spirit. I have not let down the emperor, and I have a clear conscience to the people. I have lived a magnanimous life. I am not afraid of criticism and disdain slander. My achievements will be written in history and judged by future generations. Do you think that I will become a treacherous official who disrespects the emperor and only cares about personal gain because of your nonsense?" His words were powerful, reasonable, and neither servile nor overbearing. Well done. The officials were very happy to hear this and cheered loudly in their hearts. These old people cherished their reputation and felt that a good man would not fight with a woman. They were even more embarrassed to quarrel with Empress. Now that Sun Lang was doing it for them, they were very comfortable and happy to watch the show. Empress obviously did not expect that Sun Lang's ability to talk was not inferior to his military talent. Wasn't this guy a general? How could he be so eloquent? Before she could retaliate, Sun Lang continued, "Empress, your words today were rude and insulted the officials. For the sake of His Majesty, I will not argue with you. We are important officials of the empire. After the emperor was assassinated and fell into a coma, we were worried day and night and did not eat or drink. We racked our brains to help the country and did not dare to slack off. Now that the political situation in the imperial capital is stable and the movements of the 9 provinces are closely monitored and controlled, the great empire is peaceful. This is our job. Empress, you said that we only care about fighting for power and profit." Empress was tongue-tied. She angrily argued, "But His Majesty is still unconscious and the murderer is still at large. What do you say about this?" Sun Lang said indifferently, "Empress, you must be joking. Saving His Majesty is the matter of the Imperial Hospital and the Imperial Treasury. Arresting the murderer is the task of the Tensei General. What should I say? I have nothing to say." Empress's expression changed, as if she had caught Sun Lang's weakness. Her tone was aggressive. "Nothing to say? Is arresting the murderer really the task of the Tensei General? The officials once discussed arresting the old, young, and clansmen of the Lingmu Li family for interrogation. I heard that it was you who stopped it, right? That damned traitor committed the crime of assassinating the emperor and should be executed. His family may know his whereabouts, but General, you are actually shielding him. What is your intention? Sun Lang said coldly. This was the decision of the important officials of the imperial court. It was agreed by my colleagues and the two sword saints. It was not my arbitrary decision. As for the reason, according to the laws of the empire, I do not need to explain it to Empress. Empress was rebuffed again. Her face showed anger. She said coldly, Okay. Sun Lang looked at her. As the master of the inner palace, Empress should be the mother of the country. The imperial harem should not interfere with the imperial court. You only need to appease the new people in the imperial palace and protect His Majesty. The country will be taken care of by us. There is no need for Empress to interfere. Not only will you not be able to help, you will also cause trouble for no reason. You should learn from Empress Dowager's modesty and indifference. The eunuchs and palace maids in the palace had never seen such extravagant officials. They were all stunned. The imperial guards were also secretly speechless. Today, they finally understood what the so-called domineering meant. Li Jiansheng also gave Sun Lang a look as if he was killing a chicken. He meant to give Empress some face. The officials also felt that it was not very decent. Someone frowned and dissuaded. General, you are too much, Sun Lang said faintly. How is it too much? There is a difference between the inside and outside. The imperial harem is not allowed to interfere with the imperial court. This is the imperial law. Emperor Gaozong said it. Do you think I am too much? Do you want to change the ancestral law? That official was a good person who was used to smoothing things over. As soon as he said it, he regretted it. After all, Sun Lang, this hard cement had long become hard. How could he smooth things over? See, he was immediately rebuked. His Majesty is in a coma and can't manage the imperial court. The heavy responsibility of the country's affairs is all on our shoulders. It's fine if we work overtime to increase the workload, but we have to be ridiculed by Lady Boss. You are being ridiculed. Aren't you angry? You are angry, but you don't say it. You hide in the back and wait for me, an honest person, to stand up for you. I stand up for you, but after the matter, you laugh it off and complain that I am too much. You're also too much. Darren, who was trying to smooth things over, was also confused. He smiled bitterly and admitted defeat. On the other side, the Empress was infuriated by the roundabout ridicule. She was so angry that her whole body trembled. She shouted, Rebel! Rebel! You are simply lawless and lawless. Sun Lang frowned and said, Your Highness is the mother of the country. Please don't be unreasonable. In front of so many people, please be more dignified. The Crown Prince braced himself and went up to persuade her. As a result, he was kicked by the angry Empress. He was immediately sent flying 20 feet away and rolled on the ground. He was in pain and angry, but he couldn't do anything. He felt so wronged. Empress was so angry that she kicked the Crown Prince. Suddenly, she remembered something. That's right, I am not a weak woman who can't even trust a chicken. I can hit him. As expected of the country of martial arts, Empress had been diligently practicing martial arts since she was young. She had lived in the depths of the palace for a long time, so she could only practice martial arts and read the many martial arts books in the palace to relieve her boredom. She also had the guidance of famous teachers and the assistance of precious medicines. Her cultivation was not weak and was even far above that of the Crown Prince. At this moment, she was so angry that her womanly instinct to throw a tantrum was ignited. Her 10 sharp fingers grabbed at Sun Lang. Second official, you thief. The eunuchs and palace maids were immediately shocked. The leader of the imperial guards didn't know what to do. When Empress was fighting with a general of another dynasty, how should they deal with this matter? Empress's movements were extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she charged at Sun Lang. The important officials of the empire beside General Shunsei saw the opportunity and immediately opened up a path for the Empress to charge. At the same time, these pillars of the empire once again revealed an eager expression. If possible, they hoped to see General Shunsei send Empress flying with a powerful whip kick. What kind of explosive scene would that be? If they could see it once in their lives, it would be worth it. Anyway, they were not the ones who beat up Empress. Watching a good show was never a big deal. They felt that with Sun Lang's fearless personality, he probably wouldn't be polite to Her Highness Empress. The ministers were already prepared to watch a show. In their view, Her Highness Empress was just asking for humiliation. Although a good man didn't fight with a woman, why would Sun Lang care about this? When Sun Lang saw Empress rushing over, he was startled at first, then he sneered. Humph, you really don't know what's good for you. You actually dare to show off in front of me. Could it be that you don't know? Wait a minute. Wait. Sun Lang suddenly reacted the moment the wind from the fist hit his body. His figure suddenly flashed, and he barely escaped the range of Empress's palm wind. He then shouted in a low voice, Empress, please conduct yourself with dignity. What kind of scandal is this? Empress turned a deaf ear to him and only said sternly, I'll beat you, disrespectful scoundrel. Sun Lang ran around the pillar and shouted, Someone come quickly. Everyone was at a loss. Some bold eunuchs wanted to stop him, but they were all sent flying by Her Highness Empress's palm. Sun Lang only cared about dodging. He looked very flustered and exasperated. He was really sullen. After dodging for a while, he saw that the crown prince was still standing there in a daze. He shouted angrily, What are you standing there for? Quickly go invite the Empress Dowager. Empress angrily said, Why invite the Empress Dowager? To see a rebellious minister like you? Sun Lang dodged and shouted, Empress, you're playing with water. Your husband is still over there. Hey, can you still be reasonable? What if he sees you? Empress gritted her teeth and said, I only hope that he can open his eyes and see the true face of a rebellious and treacherous minister like you. Sun Lang was tired of dodging. He looked at Empress, who was like a mad tiger, and looked at the Emperor's dragon bed over there. He thought of the power of health that troubled him so much. The origin of this curse undoubtedly came from the Emperor's selfishness and conspiracy. When he thought of this, the flames of revenge burned fiercely. You asked for it. Chapter 1063. In an instant, Sun Lang's mind turned like lightning as he quickly pondered. First of all, Empress was not weak in martial arts. Secondly, as the mother of the nation, she was in charge of the imperial seal of the imperial seal. It was an imperial army seal, and it was of extremely high quality. After all, Hoodoo was founded on martial arts, and the imperial army was a powerful country. Hundreds of years of subtle influence was enough to form new traditions and etiquette. The various political, military, and sacrificial items in and out of the empire had gradually become part of the imperial army. Empress Seal was a treasure of the imperial palace. It had been made into the imperial army by the sacred artifact supervisor hundreds of years ago to show her majesty and nobility as the mother of the world. Of course, it was not known for its strength, but rather for its beauty, charm, and defense. After all, the empire did not need Empress to fight. In fact, one of the most important uses of Empress Seal was the permission to have sex. In other words, if the emperor wanted to have sex with any concubine tonight, just flipping the plate was useless. After flipping the plate, the eunuch had to organize this matter into a document and send it to Empress. It was to tell her that her husband wanted to have sex with this little bitch tonight, and she had to take out her seal to stamp it. This meant that this sex had been approved by Empress, who managed the affairs of the imperial palace according to the basic laws, and that they could have sex. It was a kind of green feeling. After all, there was a difference between the inside and outside. The emperor ruled the world, and Empress managed the imperial palace. Thus, if the emperor wanted to have sex with anyone, he had to get Empress approval, even if it was just a procedure. That was probably what was going on. It was precisely because of the various considerations of its function that the sacred artifact supervisor did not design the Empress's seal with great power and offensive capabilities. After all, this was the seal of forgiveness, not the overturning heaven seal. But it was still Empress Seal. Regardless of its power, its specifications and quality were naturally extremely high. This was because its owner and user was the noblest woman in the empire. In other words, its energy level and attribute strength should be one of the top imperial army. This meant that Her Highness Empress would also be resistant to the great health force. This would ensure that she would not easily turn into a river flowing east under Sun Lang's touch. It was just that it would become very, very strange. She would feel a strange yet familiar throbbing from the bottom of her heart, as if she had returned to the days when she was still young, when she was burning with passion, when she had an endless and incomparably distant past. After all, Empress had also reached that kind of lonely age. The Emperor had wanted to live forever these years, and had mysteriously gotten together with the devil Yuan Zhu. It was estimated that they had long become friends who abstained from sex. From this, it could be seen that Empress must have been intolerably lonely all year round. She did not dare to look for a lover, but she had probably practiced the one yang finger. Humph, 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 humph. A cold light flashed in Sun Lang's eyes. There was a saying that anger arose from the heart, and evil grew from the side of courage. He did not have the slightest good impression of Empress. There is no need to mention the old grievances with the Emperor that were as deep as the ocean. Now that this woman was so aggressive and had delivered herself to his door, he felt that he needed to teach her a profound lesson. Of course, he would not be so stupid as to make any obvious physical contact with her. There is a kind of martial arts technique in this world called the release of Jinqi. Just like the one yang finger and the 6 meridians magical sword of the Duan family in Dali, it shot out vigorous internal energy. Its power was incomparably strong, and it hurt people invisibly. And Sun Lang, this man, could do even more terrifying things. After all, with his martial arts cultivation, the release of Jinqi was not difficult at all. He could even freely change the nature of his Jinqi. He could shoot out incomparably sharp, invisible sword qi that could cut gold and jade. He could also shoot out mellow and mighty healing Jinqi that nourished the heart and meridians. He could also shoot out that kind of cold and indifferent healing ray. Of course, the last one only existed in theory and imagination. After all, in these 2 years, he had been disgraced by the great protection, strength. All day long, he had been thinking about how to solve this curse that made people despair. How could he dig deeper into its greater use? Only when he was bored to death would he find joy in the midst of suffering and casually fantasize. He had even imagined a move that would continuously shoot out the great protection, strength sword qi from all 720 acupuncture points on his body, and launch a large-scale saturation bombing move. He called this move the 25th sword, protect the water resources and the common future of mankind. Of course, with the addition of the sacred fire sword, the 26th sword was not far away. Throwing this extremely dangerous gay thought to the back of his mind, Sun Lang dodged Empress's attacks, and at the same time took in the expressions of everyone present. Not to mention the palace guards. Most of the first-rank ministers standing here were exceptional martial arts experts. He could not let them see him. Great menstruation. Sun Lang staggered back, and with the help of the sacred fire sword, the constantly changing great protection, strength was able to silently adhere to the hard and smooth stone floor. He had already seen through Empress's martial arts, and had already predicted her next move. This was his greatest gain in the Great Desolate Mountain. When one's martial arts reached a certain level, their abilities were no different from myths and legends. The martial arts of the world no longer had any secrets in his eyes. After seeing through the opponent's martial arts and the characteristics of their movements, all of the opponent's actions were already within his grasp. It was almost the power of prophecy. As expected, Sun Lang slightly changed his posture, and Empress followed his script and stepped forward to attack without hesitation, and just happened to step on the footprints left by Sun Lang. Then, nothing happened. Sun Lang sensed the obscure fluctuations of the Imperial Army, which disappeared in a flash. It was clear that the great protection strength was not as effective as it should have been, or it could be said that its strength was too small, so much so that the furious Empress had overlooked it. After all, her mental state was currently very agitated. Since that was the case, then let's try this. How about 3 times the strength? Sun Lang was just about to double his strength when at this moment, a violent coughing sound rang out, in the direction of the dragon bed. This sound was so familiar that when it landed in everyone's ears, it was like a clap of thunder. Empress chasing after Sun Lang. Sun Lang dodging Empress. The spectating officials, the vexed crown prince, the anxious palace maids and eunuchs, and the palace guards at a loss. Everyone's expressions froze. Empress suddenly turned her head, and His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince looked as if he had been struck by lightning. Everyone else had different expressions on their faces. At the first moment, everyone's expressions were instinctive. If this scene was recorded, it would definitely be able to depict the various expressions of the imperial palace and the treacherous schemes of countless people. But in the next moment, everyone's expressions became the same: joy, agitation, and disbelief. Empress could no longer pay attention to Sun Lang. She immediately turned around and charged toward the dragon bed. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince also scrambled forward, and the princes all appeared extremely excited and filial. The imperial physicians and divine weapon great eunuchs were also rather excited. This concerned their lives and futures. "All of you, get out of the way!" Empress rushed forward and called out, "Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" The crown prince and the many princes called out affectionately as an accompaniment. Several white-haired imperial physicians wanted to confirm His Majesty's condition, but they could not interfere. This was because other than Empress, the crown prince, and the various princes, the leaders of the other dynasties were all itching to move forward. Everyone was fighting to be the first to express their concern and loyalty to the emperor. Sun Lang stood in the distance with his arms crossed, still watching coldly from the sidelines. As a member of the royalist faction, Lord Wen Quanfu had been suppressed by many factions over the past few days. Naturally, Sun Lang's henchmen had also been making a ruckus. His relationship with Sun Lang had always been poor, and the recent days had been especially difficult. Now that His Majesty, who had been unconscious all this time, finally had a reaction, it really made him feel refreshed. Moreover, it was a good thing. His Majesty had a reaction, which meant that the day of his awakening was not far away. If the emperor woke up, it meant that Sun Lang's ambition to seize power had officially been thwarted. Lord Wen felt extremely happy. Once he was happy, he wanted to find Sun Lang to share the joy in his heart. "General Sun, this is truly worthy of celebration," he said with a fake smile. "His Majesty is unconscious, and the people of the court are in turmoil. Everyone's hearts are empty and feel that something is missing. Now that His Majesty's condition has improved, it means that the turmoil for a while is about to come to an end. Those demons and monsters who want to fish in troubled waters will finally be declared bankrupt. General, you don't seem very happy." Sun Lang glanced at him and sighed. Lord Wen still remembered this guy's violent behavior a few days ago in the royal palace, where he had sent Li Tonggu flying with one slap. Seeing this, he took a step back and said warily, "This is the royal palace. Don't mess around." Sun Lang's eyes showed pity. "Lord Wen, aren't you still afraid?" When Quanfu did not understand. "What do you mean?" Sun Lang shook his head. "Look, so what if His Majesty wakes up? You bare your teeth at me, and when I look at you, you retreat timidly. What does this mean? It means that whether His Majesty wakes up or not, you are very afraid of me. No matter what, your master son is still your master Sunday. From this point of view, I am very happy. As a civil official, to be beaten to a pulp by a military official's words, when Darren could be considered the shame of the literati. This time, he still didn't get any benefits. He was so angry that he was trembling. He pointed his sword at Sun Lang and was just about to say a few harsh words to reprimand him for being arrogant and despotic, when Sun Lang had already retracted his gaze. He said in a low voice, "Quiet." The gentle and powerful voice exploded in everyone's ears, calming the chaotic scene. Everyone looked at him, looked at General Shunsei, whose expression was as calm as usual. "Her Majesty Empress, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, and all the other princes, I can understand your joy, but His Majesty's health is more important. You should move aside and make room for the imperial physicians." Compared to visiting His Majesty, we need to know the true condition of His Majesty's body and not be in a mess. He walked forward. Imperial physicians, take His Majesty's pulse. The Crown Prince immediately moved to the side obediently. The other princes didn't really want to move. Sun Lang made a sound of agreement and said, "This prince is dilly-dallying. Could it be that he is stalling for time and doesn't want the imperial physician to treat His Majesty?" The prince shivered. "No, no, don't speak nonsense." After saying this, he quickly fled to the side. Her Majesty Empress looked at Sun Lang. The hostility in her eyes did not lessen at all. Instead, there was a hint of arrogance and pride. It was as if she was mocking Sun Lang's previous domineering actions. "You took advantage of His Majesty's coma to act tyrannically in the palace and even provoked me. Now that His Majesty is about to wake up, what are you going to do?" "How stupid." Sun Lang laughed coldly in his heart. The Empress took Sun Lang's silence as a sign of weakness. The corners of her mouth were still slightly cold. Then, she moved to the side and continued to stand by the Emperor's side. She did not retreat, but only made room for the imperial physician. The experts from the Imperial Academy of Medicine and the Ministry of Imperial Finances quickly came forward. After a moment of diagnosis, they looked troubled. Empress urged, "How is His Majesty's condition? What happened just now?" They exchanged glances. The imperial physician said, "Your Majesty, His Majesty's spirit has improved. His reaction just now is a good thing. Judging from this, he will soon recover his consciousness. But..." Doctors were afraid of the word "but." Empress frowned. "But what?" The imperial physician hesitated for a moment and said with a bitter face, "The treatment is about the root cause. His Majesty is in a coma because of his injuries. The power of wood is strange and changeable. It is constantly multiplying and replicating. Most of His Majesty's energy is used to fight against the power of wood, so he fell into a deep sleep to maintain his spirit. Now that His Majesty is getting better, it is actually the increase of his spirit, but his injuries he hemmed and hawed." Empress listened for a while before she understood. In other words, His Majesty's improvement is due to his own good fortune and the blessing of the ancestors. But you are still helpless? The imperial physician and the others bowed again. "We are incompetent." The topic returned to the previous one. Empress glared and was about to scold them again. Suddenly, she saw the Emperor's eyelashes tremble. The Emperor of the Empire slowly opened his eyes. His voice was a little hoarse, but it still contained the power and majesty to control the country and rule the world. He said, What happened to me?" The eunuchs and palace maids all knelt down. The Empress' eyes were instantly filled with tears. The Crown Prince and the princes squeezed over. Even a few important officials in the court couldn't help but bow. In any case, Li Guangyuan was still the legitimate emperor of this country. He had a high prestige. Just by waking up, he could easily stabilize the turbulent situation. Sun Lang had been watching coldly from the sidelines. Some things might not be real just by imagination. Only by experiencing it personally could one know how big the threat was. The emperor's injuries were still not getting better. The imperial physician had said clearly that as long as the power of wood was not removed, the emperor would still have to lie in bed and struggle. But even so, once the emperor woke up, Empress was no longer panicking. The crown prince was panicking. Some of the ministers who had begun to waver and ponder instantly made up their minds. This was the power of the emperor. This was the orthodox power. This great enemy could not be underestimated. General Shin's heart calmed down. The assassination was just a trick. Now that the emperor has woken up, it is the second step of your plan, right? It's okay. You can take it slow. Let me see what you can do. Chapter 1064. In this palace, there was a show of loyalty, filial piety, and love. To put it simply, after the imperial physician treated the empress, after the empress treated the crown prince, after the crown prince treated the princes, after the princes treated the ministers, everyone took turns to have a conversation with His Majesty. That was probably what was going on. The scene was very moving. For a moment, the sound of crying shook the heavens. It started because a prince wanted to show his filial piety, so he beat his chest and stamped his feet. He was so happy that tears rolled down his cheeks because his father had woken up. This was more annoying because when he cried, the crown prince and the other princes had to cry too. Moreover, they could not be weak, otherwise they would be unfilial. The crown prince and the other princes were crying happily. As servants, how could they not cry? The emperor was blessed by the heavens. With the blessing of the ancestors, now that you have woken up, are you touched? In short, the scene was a little out of control. Everyone was crying loudly. Those who did not know would think that the emperor had died. What are you crying for? The emperor's weak and angry voice sounded. He finally turned off the switch to vent his emotions. He was like a weak lion, trying to show his majesty and power. I'm not dead yet. What are you crying for? As soon as he said this, the whole place was silent. Everyone immediately stopped crying and did not even dare to make a sound. They all held their breaths and did not even breathe. The emperor's power was like this. The emperor lay on the bed and closed his eyes for a moment. His face was still a little pale, and it was difficult for him to speak. However, no one dared to look down on him. After all, he was the supreme ruler of this country. How many days have I been unconscious? Empress whispered. Your Majesty, the emperor's voice became louder. Where is my crown prince? His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince took 2 steps forward and said in a timid tone, I am here. Sun Lang saw this and shook his head slightly. This guy really could not be helped. No wonder there were not many ministers who thought highly of him. The emperor turned his head slightly and glanced at his son. His eyes were as sharp as knives and looked at him with dissatisfaction. You are the crown prince, my successor. You must take out the responsibility of a crown prince. Jiansheng hurriedly replied, Yes, yes. The emperor sighed. How many days have I been unconscious? His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince immediately replied, reporting to Imperial Father, it has been 5 days. The emperor said indifferently, Hey, 5 days. On that day, the traitors attempted to assassinate me. The Forbidden Palace's formation was activated. The news could not be concealed. I was unconscious for 5 days. Was the court peaceful? What did the Crown Prince do? Li Jiansheng said cautiously, Akin will be supervising the country on behalf of Fu Huang. Fortunately, there are many Darren who do not abandon me and assist me with all their might. We are stabilizing the country and pacifying the people's hearts. Therefore, the country is stable and there will be no chaos. The emperor glanced at him again. Regent, if my memory is correct, before I was assassinated, the ministers outside the palace were quarreling loudly. The memorials to the Office of Transmission were piled up like snowflakes. Everyone was scolding me for being arbitrary. Everyone thought that you, the Crown Prince, were illegitimate and wanted me to immediately issue an imperial edict to depose you. Later, when I was assassinated and was unable to do anything, would they have taken you seriously and supported you as regent? Hearing this, Li Jiansheng's body trembled. He did not dare to speak. The prince's faces revealed a playful expression. A few of the ministers laughed coldly in their hearts. Empress looked at Sun Lang proudly. Everyone present knew that with Li Jiansheng's shallow foundation and popularity, it was impossible for him to obtain the recognition and respect of the ministers with his own strength. When the emperor was assassinated, he lost his greatest support. It was almost certain that he would be marginalized by the dissatisfied ministers, but he had successfully gained a foothold. This was all with the help of one person. Shouldn't say General Sun Lang. This general of Tian Yuan, who had an unclear grudge with the emperor, used his own influence and methods to take advantage of the situation. With a flip of his hand, he created clouds and rain with a flip of his hand. He was able to solidify Li Jiansheng's position as crown prince. Before anyone else, he delivered a large basin of charcoal to the trembling His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. It was an ingenious political investment, and he had received sufficient returns. Having obtained the recognition of the legitimate crown prince to govern the country, Li Jiansheng returned the favor and gave Sun Lang great respect and reward. Now, Sun Lang's words carried more and more weight in court. It was all because of Li Jianxing's close cooperation and obedience. These two fellows, who were together, were wantonly stealing the emperor's authority for their own use. It was simply too good to be true. Everyone was envious of them. But now, the emperor had woken up. Was it going to be easy now? At this moment, the dark side of human nature was laughing coldly. Everyone looked as if they were watching a good show, especially the princes. They were well aware that the relationship between their father and Sun Lang was very awkward. If the old man knew that the crown prince he had just appointed was in cahoots with his enemy, what would happen? Everyone was looking forward to it. After all, for the princes who had failed to be chosen as crown prince, it was simply the most delightful thing to see the crown prince being screwed by their father. Empress was also laughing coldly without a sound. She didn't like Sun Lang, and she also didn't like Li Jianxing. These two little bastards were even in cahoots with each other. Now that the emperor had woken up, her heart was at ease. Then, it was time to settle the score. She was already prepared to add fuel to the fire. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince panicked. When he had first decided to work together with Sun Lang, he had experienced a long psychological struggle. The main pressure had come from his father. After all, he knew that his father and Sun Lang were not on good terms. On one side, his father had just supported him against all opposition and helped him ascend the throne, and on the other side, he had thrown himself into the arms of Sun Lang. This was too much of a green tea. Later, his father had been assassinated and fell into a coma. He had lost his greatest support and similarly had no room for choice. If he didn't work together with Sun Lang, he couldn't even be the crown prince. How could he care about whether or not his father was angry? But now, it was time to settle the score. Thus, he was very panicked. He trembled, pitiful, weak, and helpless. The emperor's calm voice rang out. "What is it, Crown Prince? Is there something you can't say?" The Crown Prince unconsciously turned his head to look at Sun Lang. At this moment, he was kneeling at the very front. When he turned his head, not only could he see Sun Lang, but he could also see the expressions of the various princes and officials. He saw the mockery hidden in the depths of his royal brother's eyes. He saw the mockery hidden in the eyes of the important officials of the kingdom. Everyone looked down on him. Everyone was waiting to see him make a fool of himself. Just like before, everyone felt that he could not be the crown prince. Everyone felt that he did not deserve to be the crown prince. Seeing this, Sun Lang wanted to speak up to help the crown prince out of this situation. Li Jianxing could not be helped up, but for him, it was a good thing. If he was like Li Guangyuan, it would be too troublesome to control him. So His Imperial Highness, the Crown Prince, can continue to rely on me without any problems. Just as General Shunsei was about to speak, he suddenly heard a prince say softly, "Father, please allow me to report. Royal brother has a noble person helping him." As soon as he finished speaking, an angry shout rang out. "Shut up." The one who spoke was actually Li Jianxing. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was enraged. He turned his head and coldly said, "This is me, as the Crown Prince, speaking to Emperor Father. I am your brother, and also the Crown Prince. If I don't speak, do you have the right to speak? What qualifications do you have to answer Emperor Father's question for me?" Li Jianxing, who had always been known for his gentleness and modesty, revealed a dazzling edge. When things reach an extreme, they can only move in the opposite direction. He did not care about his brother's ashen face, which was a mixture of surprise, fear, and anger. After he finished speaking, he knelt back to the emperor and said in a deep voice, "Father, please allow me to report. When the emperor was attacked by an assassin, I was at a loss. After all, my foundation is shallow and my reputation is not well known. I was unable to convince the officials. I was unable to. However, Imperial Grandmother trusted and supported me. All the officials were deeply righteous. Shinsei General Sun Lang stood his ground and helped me to calmly govern the country. The country was like a mountain, and the empire was stable." He said it. Everyone shouted in their hearts. He did not play dumb, did not smooth things over, and did not try to change the topic. Instead, he openly told the emperor that he had a deal with Sun Lang. Everyone admired Li Jianqing's courage while waiting for the emperor's thunderous anger. This was human nature. Anyone would be angry if they were in his shoes. Look at you, you brat. I supported you to the position of successor under enormous pressure and infamy, but you king sold me out in the blink of an eye. Taking advantage of me being injured and unconscious, you actually hooked up with my enemy. You king shit. Who knew that the emperor would laugh? Good, good, good. He laughed and nodded. The imperial doctors could not help but straighten their bodies and prepare to perform emergency treatment. The princes were uneasy. They felt that the emperor was being sarcastic. The important officials glanced at Sun Lang. They were addicted to watching the show. Just now, Sun Lang and Empress were not satisfied. How about a mixed pair of men and women? Then they heard the emperor say, General Shansei, you are indeed the pillar of the country. I knew that out of all the civil and military officials in the court, you are the most responsible. You can be relied on in critical moments and can be entrusted with important matters of the country. Sun Lang's expression was calm. It is my duty. Your Majesty is too kind. The emperor sighed and said, the strong wind knows the strong grass, and the board knows the loyal officials. I can tell that if it weren't for you, my son would have suffered a lot. His foundation is shallow, and his methods are childish. I'm afraid that he would be played to death by the outside court, just because he has the title of crown prince without a proper title. This script was not right. What was this? Or was this an act? Feigning civility? Everyone was stunned. They then saw the emperor gasping for breath, his face paling even more as he struggled to speak. I succeeded to the throne in the bloody battle of Tianyuan and took over the heavy burden of the empire from the late emperor. For decades, I did not dare to slack off. Finally, I defeated the extraterrestrial demons and did not disappoint the late emperor. Now that I have encountered such a disaster, I am not afraid of death. The only thing I am worried about is the empire of our ancestors, the empire. Empress cried out involuntarily, Your Majesty? The emperor looked at Sun Lang, revealing a smile. I'm not worried now. With the commander-in-chief, the empire is as stable as a rock. I only hope that you will continue to assist my son on account of our relationship as ruler and subject. Do not slack off. In the future, there will be a beautiful story in the annals of history. Sun Lang bowed seriously and said, How can I not obey? My life will be at your service, needless to say. The emperor smiled and nodded. The more everyone listened, the more they felt that something was wrong. What was with this feeling of entrusting his son? Empress looked at Sun Lang and then at her husband in shock. She was probably wondering if Sun Lang had used some kind of witchcraft. The emperor rested for a while and said, Announce the decree. Everyone said in unison, Long live the emperor. Li Guangyin looked at the beam and said calmly, I have been unvirtuous, which led to today's events. I feel that my body is heavy and the time of recovery is still far away. I should rest and look for good doctors. I will have to trouble you all to continue to work hard and assist the crown prince in governing the country. This is the first reason. The second reason is that General Sun Lang, Shansei, has outstanding military achievements. He is loyal and pure. He is really a talent in planning the country. I am very relieved to have such a national scholar. Today, I will confer the title of Imperial Tutor to the Crown Prince. He will be the teacher of the East Palace. The Crown Prince will treat him as a teacher and ask for advice day and night to guide the national policy. Empress's expression changed. Your Majesty, the Emperor waved his hand and said, I have made up my mind. General Shansei has outstanding military achievements. He has saved the country from extinction. The position of General Shansei is just an empty position. How can I reward him for his great service? General Shansei is young and is similar to the Crown Prince. Today, he is the Crown Prince's imperial tutor. After 100 years, he can assist the Crown Prince and protect the country. Sun Lang was moved. He bowed and said, Your Majesty, I hope you will have a dragon body. We will do everything in our power to repay your Majesty's kindness in recognizing our worth. The emperor forced a smile. Imperial tutor, I will leave everything to you. He did not wait for everyone to digest this important news. He looked at Empress again. There are changes in the Forbidden Palace, and people's hearts are in turmoil. Although there are many talents in the outside court, there are differences between the inside and outside. They cannot be used. I fell into a coma too suddenly and did not give an order. Today, I order Empress to hold the Luan Feng Tian seal to assist the country and coordinate the internal and external affairs. Will Empress be willing? What he meant was that he allowed Empress to govern the country. At least with the emperor's official appointment, she could legally give orders to many things. The ministers were not happy. After all, everyone saw how crazy Empress was just now. Who would have the patience to deal with this woman? But the emperor was in this state now. Do you still want to talk back to him? If the emperor was angered to death, who would take the responsibility? No one was willing to. No, there was one person who was willing. Sun Lang, the magical Sun Lang. He was not afraid of anything. There was nothing he did not dare to do. However, he had just received a big bargain. He had taken advantage of others and was soft-hearted. How could he have a nerve to jump out and oppose? Wait. Many people's minds moved. Could it be that the emperor made the crown prince the imperial tutor to let Sun Lang acquiesce to Empress's involvement in politics? Here, Sun Lang was rewarded generously. Now, Sun Lang was too embarrassed to refute this matter. But this did not make sense. Empress only had that little ability. Even if she was qualified to participate in politics, she was not the opponent of the ministers. For this, the emperor gave up Sun Lang, the crown prince's imperial tutor. This was too much of a loss, right? That was the crown prince's imperial tutor. In the future, Jiansheng and the others would have the qualifications to be the emperor's tutors. With this title and identity, this brat could get a lot of benefits. Moreover, what could he gain by letting Empress participate in politics? Also, what was going on today? He actually praised Sun Lang with good words and promised such a big cake. Could it be that the emperor admitted defeat? Chapter 1065. What had happened today was simply magical. His Majesty, who had been in a coma for 5 days, did 3 things as soon as he woke up. First, he officially confirmed the crown prince's status as regent. Second, he conferred Sun Lang the title of Shunsei Grand Tutor to the crown prince. Third, he ordered Empress to attend the state affairs. His actions were swift and mysterious. It was as if his mind had been bewitched by Sun Lang's witchcraft. After doing these 3 things, His Majesty fell into a coma again. There was no reason at all. In the bedchamber, the imperial physicians began an emergency examination and rescue. The emperor's family members cried and screamed again. The ministers of the empire stood aside and looked at each other in confusion. Then they looked at Sun Lang at the same time. The newly appointed Grand Tutor blinked his big, innocent eyes and did not speak. The Empress Dowager, who had received the news, hurried over. But she did not see her son who was awake. Under her inquiry, Empress told her what had happened. She even told her that Sun Lang had been promoted. After all, everyone was listening. She could not deny it. The Empress Dowager sighed. Since it is His Majesty's decree, pass it on. Empress was obviously unwilling. The Crown Prince's regent was a foregone conclusion. The Emperor's decree was just a matter of status. It seemed beautiful to listen to the state affairs behind the curtain. But Empress knew her own situation. The Empress Dowager had great power. They were all heroes who had killed their way out of the sea of blood in the Tianyuan battlefield. How could she be a match for them? Even if she could listen to the state affairs, she could not win against them. In this way, the one who benefited the most from this matter was obviously Sun Lang. That was the Crown Prince's imperial tutor, the future imperial tutor, the Crown Prince's guardian. Sun Lang, this bastard, was originally brilliant in his achievements, and his reputation was illustrious. Now that he was plated with a layer of the imperial family's halo, wouldn't his mother be amazing? The emperor had personally asked Sun Lang to teach the Crown Prince. This meant that the title of Crown Prince's Grand Tutor was not an empty title. He was truly the Crown Prince's teacher. This was practically a personal promise that Sun Lang could stir up trouble in court. Empress couldn't help but feel angry when she thought about what this guy had done before and how rude and insolent he was today. Anyway, the conflict between her and Sun Lang was irreconcilable. Since that was the case, she might as well make things difficult for him. She was heard to whisper in the Empress Dowager's ear, "Imperial Mother, Sun Lang is a very lazy person. Several times he has spoken rudely to your son, despising the imperial family. How can he be the crown prince's teacher?" She then told her mother about what had just happened, and then said, "Mother, please allow me to report. Although His Majesty has a decree, he does not know what had just happened. Sun Lang has obviously failed to live up to his expectations. Once the emperor is unable to take care of things, he will show his arrogant and domineering attitude, even going against your son." When Sun Lang heard this, he curled his lips in disdain. "A bunch of nonsense. When did I contradict you? If I really contradicted you, I would only need to go in and out 7 times and you'd be done for." He directly raised his hand and said, "Reporting to the Empress Dowager, Her Highness Empress just hit me. If your son didn't have some martial strength, I would have already been beaten to death by Empress. She even scolded us." Empress angrily said, "How dare you, Sun Lang? You." Sun Lang waved his fist. "Your Highness, please don't make a mistake. It is also because you're Empress that this son has repeatedly endured. If it was any other woman who dared to make a scene in front of me, I would have already beaten them to death with a single punch." Fuck, this guy still wasn't done yet. Everyone was shocked. This mother of ****, who said that receiving a gift would blind one's eyes. Sun Lang had just received a great benefit from His Majesty, so he still continued to scold Empress. This was really too much of a sociopath. Empress trembled with anger and said to the Empress Dowager, "Imperial Mother, look, this kind of vulgar martial artist, this kind of arrogant person who doesn't respect the imperial family, is he worthy of being the crown prince's teacher?" The Empress Dowager looked at Sun Lang reproachfully. "Don't be rude." Sun Lang immediately lowered his eyes and said submissively, "I have always been very obedient in front of the Empress Dowager." The Empress Dowager shook her head and smiled. "Empress, you don't need to say any more. General Shin's temper is like this. When he spoke to this old one before, he was also not polite." Mother of ****. Empress's eyes widened. "Why are you also on his side? What is wrong with your family?" The Empress Dowager patted her hand and then said slowly, "His Majesty is a wise ruler. He has always had his own opinions and a keen eye. Since there is such an edict, there must be a deep meaning. In this old one's opinion, you can draft the edict now." The ministers pondered for a moment and then bowed at the same time. "We obey the imperial order." His Majesty's golden mouth and jade words were the imperial order. He found a teacher for his son, and he didn't need the approval of the outside court. Although the ministers were unhappy that Sun Lang was hit by a meat pie, they couldn't do anything at this time. No one wanted to go against Sun Lang at this time. Otherwise, this guy had many ways to fight back. For example, you don't listen to His Majesty's orders. What? You think that His Majesty is old, injured, unconscious, and lying in bed, so his words are not useful, right? Another example, you said that when His Majesty is unconscious, his mind is muddled, and sometimes the orders he gives are not correct. In other words, the order to let Empress listen to the government is not correct. Things like that. Thinking of this guy's fierce appearance just now, no one wanted to go up and make trouble. Therefore, under the consent and gaze of the ministers, the crown prince wrote the imperial edict on behalf of the emperor and stamped it. Then, he immediately came in front of Sun Lang and bowed to Sun Lang. In the empire, when the emperor conferred the title of a first-rank official, he had to bow to the ministers and entrust them with the country's affairs. Moreover, the crown prince was facing his own teacher in the Eastern Palace. He lowered his head deeply. Disciple Jiansheng greets teacher. Sun Lang looked around. "Wait, no one has any objections?" "Stop talking nonsense. Haven't you played enough?" Sun Lang said sincerely. "Think about it. Can a military ruffian like me, a vulgar martial artist, and a hooligan in the marketplace really teach the crown prince well? I swear all day long, and my head is full of dirty thoughts. I often fight with others, and just 2 days ago, I sent Lord Li Tonggu flying. Does no one have any objections to me being the Crown Prince's tutor? Our empire is a democratic country, so if you have something to say, just say it. The ministers rolled their eyes and were too lazy to pay attention to him. Sun Lang sighed. I'm serious. I have a lot of shortcomings and my personal qualities are poor. In fact, I'm not suitable to be a teacher. By the way, I have another shortcoming, and that is I'm too fickle and frivolous. I have a lot of one-night stands, and I'm the king of guns in the empire. I don't want to lead His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince astray. Someone in the crowd laughed out loud. Sun Lang glared. Who's laughing? Damn it, who's laughing? Come out and laugh. The other party was very cunning. He knew that Sun Lang's martial arts were unparalleled, and he could tell the location by listening. Therefore, when he laughed, he also used his inner strength and vital energy to spread out the sound waves, making it difficult to find the source. It was just a short laugh, and Sun Lang was caught off guard and would definitely not be able to find the source. In the end, the Empress Dowager made the final decision. Since the imperial edict is out, it's better for the general to accept it. And so, the matter was decided. After the matter in the palace was over, the ministers left first and left the inner palace. Everyone smiled insincerely and cupped their hands to Sun Lang to congratulate him. Li Tonggu said lightly, His Majesty is seriously injured and is in a coma. He will be awake for a short while, and the imperial edict mentioned 3 people. The crown prince is the heir to the country. Empress is the emperor's spouse, and the 3rd person is the general. At this juncture, His Majesty has made you the crown prince's grand tutor and ordered you to assist the crown prince. It is clear that the emperor's grace and trust are deep. What does the general think about this? Sun Lang showed a moved expression and sighed. When a man is about to die, his words are kind. The ministers once again underestimated Sun Lang's courage, but they were the strongest and wisest group of people in the country. At their level, it was meaningless to argue with 1 or 2 words. They only shook their heads and cupped their hands in farewell. In fact, there was nothing much to say, because with Sun Lang's talent and wisdom, he could think of everything. There was no need for them to say anything. It was better to go back and prepare early. Watching the ministers leave, Sun Lang's eyes darkened. He said to the eunuch beside him, You go cool off by yourself. I'll wait here for the crown prince. Also, I'll have to trouble you to inform the outside. When Empress Tensei arrives, tell her to come here to find me. The eunuch responsible for sending him off was not Feng Yongting, but another eunuch in the palace. Eunuch Feng had just been isolated and investigated. He was crazily investigating the assassination of the emperor. On the day the emperor was assassinated, he was not by his side. Eunuch Feng wanted to use the blood of the criminals to prove his loyalty and wash away his mistakes. The eunuch in front of him was also a figure in the palace. He was the kind of person who could wrestle with Eunuch Feng. However, in front of Sun Lang, he was as obedient as a kitten. After all, he had a certain position in the palace and a certain channel of information. He knew how domineering and insolent this master was. He also knew how poor Eunuch Wang had died. According to the rumors, Sun Lang had crushed Eunuch Wang's head in front of the emperor. He waited carefully. Hearing this, he nodded repeatedly. I'll do it right away. I'll do it right away, wait. Sun Lang rubbed his stomach. I'm hungry. Go get a table and a chair. Have the imperial kitchen prepare a table of food. Mother asterisk her, I've been in the system for so many years, but the emperor has never treated me to a meal. What am I looking at? I'm now the crown prince's grand tutor, a special teacher specially hired by the emperor. What's wrong with eating some royal rice? When Empress Tensei arrived, Sun Lang was eating heartily. Mother asterisk her, it's delicious. General Shansei held a bowl and half squatted on a chair. He ate with relish. As he ate, he smiled at the eunuchs serving beside him. No wonder so many people want to be the emperor. It's so king satisfying. These eunuchs of the imperial kitchen had never seen the world. When they heard this, they almost fainted in shock. Empress strode forward and looked at the messy cups and plates in front of her. Sun Lang ate directly outside the door of the central palace. He directly put the tables, chairs, stools, cups, plates, and chopsticks in the open air. Then, the imperial kitchen sent a warm banquet in various dishes. Needless to say, this was definitely the first time since the founding of Hoodoo. Willful and reckless. How old are you? You're still like a child. She looked at everything in front of her. After Sun Lang made such a scene, most of the people in the imperial harem would know about it. Moreover, with the extent of the palace's transparency, everyone in the inner palace would know about it. It meant that everyone in the outer court would know about it. She said coldly, "What's the benefit of doing this other than lowering the court's reputation?" Sun Lang smiled and said, "You're still the same as before. You have to think about everything and calculate the benefits. How tiring is that? I'm doing this because I feel good. As expected, this kind of food is the most delicious, isn't it?" Empress sneered. "Eat happily now, but be careful of the list in the future." Sun Lang put down the bowl and slapped the table. He laughed and said, "Are you stupid again? If I, Sun Lang, lose in the political struggle and be labeled as a traitor, then my crimes will be densely packed and innumerable. Compared to those big crimes, a small matter like eating and dashing in the imperial palace is not even worth mentioning. Since that's the case, what's wrong with me eating a few more meals?" Empress's expression froze. Then, she said, "Are you going to throw the jar after it's cracked?" Sun Lang's smile was meaningful. "What do you think?" Without waiting for Empress to speak, he said to the eunuchs around him, "You've served me well. I'm very satisfied, so you can all leave. Wait a moment, I'll give you a tip." Saying this, General Shansei extended his hand. "I, the Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince, give the money." When Empress heard the words, "give a tip," she knew what kind of face Sun Lang was going to show. She was going to refuse, but when she heard the words, "Grand Tutor of the Crown Prince," her expression froze. "What?" Sun Lang smiled and said, "Give the money, or we'll just wait." Empress pulled out a pouch from her waist with a cold expression and threw it to Sun Lang. Sun Lang opened it and looked. He rolled his eyes and said, "Are you trying to get rid of the beggar? Boring." Empress was impatient. She took off the jade pendant she wore and pulled out a stack of banknotes from her sleeve. She threw it over like a fairy scattering flowers. Sun Lang reached out and waved his hand. The banknotes were manipulated by an invisible wind and fell into his hand. He put the extorted money and treasures on the table. The gold leaves and gems in the pouch were also poured out. After a rough count, the total value was no less than 10,000 taels. He pondered for a moment and pulled out 500 taels worth of banknotes and handed it to a eunuch beside him. "Distribute it." Then, he put the rest of the money into his pocket. The Emperor's concubine looked at his actions, and her temples throbbed. With her status, money was really just a worldly possession. Tensei Province's layout and investment over the years, as well as the filial piety from many sects, bureaucrats, and aristocratic families every year, was so huge that it was almost immeasurable. In comparison, the money that had just been distributed was really not worth mentioning. But she was still angry, this bastard. She kicked a chair over and sat down in front of Sun Lang. She coldly said, "What's going on with the Grand Preceptor of the Crown Prince?" Sun Lang lightly said, "As you can see, your father, who was unconscious for 5 days, woke up at the right time. He woke up at the right time to finish a complete imperial edict. Then, he fell unconscious again at the right time. Thus, the Crown Prince's position as regent was confirmed. I have a stupid student, Empress, to govern." Empress was silent for a moment. She sneered and said, "Big Brother is indeed an abandoned pawn, a bait to lure you into a trap. I wonder what kind of expression he will have when he finds out the truth." Compared to this, Sun Lang playfully said, "What kind of role do you think you will play in your father's plan?" Chapter 1066. Empress's face darkened. This was what she was worried about. The Emperor's conspiracy, the Emperor's backup plan, and the Emperor's plan. She once thought that she was the Emperor's favorite daughter and his favorite successor. She once thought that her relationship with the emperor was more like a collaborator. But what happened that night shattered all her fantasies. The so-called loner was truly a loner. From the beginning to the end, the noble emperor had never trusted anyone. Everyone was just a chess piece in his eyes. That was all. She used the excuse of chasing the assassin to stay away from the court and the palace. Like Sun Lang, she did not believe that the emperor was seriously injured by an assassin. This must be a conspiracy of the other party. There must be an ulterior motive. So she did not dare to enter the palace easily. Even if she entered the palace as a daughter, she would go with a few princes or important officials. She would not stay for long, because the current imperial palace and the current emperor already made her feel fear and apprehension. So when she suddenly heard the news that the emperor woke up today, her heart was in her throat. Fear. She felt a sudden fear. It was as if a vicious claw had reached out from the void and grabbed her throat. It made her feel helpless, and her blood froze. She did not believe that the emperor was really in a coma. Then, this awakening must mean that the other party's plan was being carried out. This meant that the wheel of conspiracy was slowly turning again. Thinking of the emperor's greedy and twisted expression that day, she felt a chill. Empress's woman's instinct and warrior's intuition told her that she would be involved in this conspiracy. But after the initial fear, she still chose to go to the palace immediately. First, she was the princess of the royal family. Out of filial piety, she had to go to the palace to visit. Second, she knew that Sun Lang must be waiting for her. Sun Lang must have an idea. Even if the other party's idea might be very unfavorable to her, perhaps this cunning man had his own plan. But if the enemy was the emperor, standing beside Sun Lang would make her feel at ease. She thought of the example that Sun Lang once gave her, the example of the romance of the three kingdoms. No matter what disagreements there were between Sun Quan and Liu Bei, under the strong threat of Cao Cao, they would have to unite. Even if there were conflicts and schemes within the allies, they would feel more at ease if they united. That was exactly what she was doing now. In the imperial palace, on a wide walkway, there was a table of warm food from the imperial kitchen. It was a very strange scene, and the two generals of the empire were sitting opposite each other. He acted as if no one else was around. The battle had already begun. Empress said calmly, "You are in a very bad situation." The position of the crown prince's grand tutor seems very tempting, but it is like a poison smeared with honey. As the crown prince's teacher, you will certainly gain a lot of power, but there will also be risks. For example, if the crown prince is deposed because of his lack of virtue, have you ever thought about how much responsibility you have to bear as the crown prince's grand tutor? At that time, your building might collapse in the blink of an eye. Sun Lang smiled faintly and poured a glass of wine for Empress. He had prepared 2 sets of bowls, chopsticks, and cups. He pushed the wine cup over and said, "Killing your fellow soldiers, killing the 7 luminaries' sword saint, destroying the kingdom protector's sacred sword, fleeing from the battlefield, and going missing. How about these crimes? Executing an official of the imperial court, intimidating a governor of a border, manipulating the military and politics of a state, secretly communicating with foreign forces. How about these crimes? Torturing and killing a prince, secretly mobilizing troops, challenging the heavenly might, ignoring the law. How about these crimes?" He poured a glass for himself, took a sip, and spat it aside. "Damn it, I really don't know what is so good about this strong wine. It is not even as good as happy drink." He threw the wine cup to the side and placed his arm on the table. His entire body leaned forward and approached the empress concubine in an aggressive manner. He slowly said, "You even watched my building collapse. If the emperor really wanted to mess with me, would he need to fabricate this kind of accusation and use the crown prince as bait? He doesn't even need to fabricate any crimes. He only needs to list out the things I have done, and the greatest national thief in the history of the empire will appear." Empress sneered and said, "Using your words, you are quite smart." Sun Lang said, "You flatter me. Compared to you and your father, I am still far behind. You see, your father clearly has a very good reason to judge me, but he doesn't do it. Why? Because he knows what he is doing. Because he knows General Shunsei said indifferently. Today he announced that I, Sun Lang, am a great traitor. In less than 2 hours, I will be able to drag him to the Imperial Ancestral Temple and cut him to pieces. The Emperor's concubines' eyes instantly became incomparably fierce. As a member of the imperial family and a general of the empire, she had enough reason to be angry. But after her subconscious anger, she realized the crux of the problem. But he dares now, Empress said bitterly. Who gave him the courage? Sun Lang replied, Liang Jingru. General Tensei's calm and serious state of mind was suddenly broken. She said angrily, Don't say such nonsense at a time like this. Sun Lang said nonchalantly, What else can I do? Right now, we are on guard against each other and will never reach true trust and consensus. Information is not transparent. Even if we discuss the Emperor's possible conspiracy, it will only be a few blind guesses. There will be no correct conclusion at all. Why should we do something useless? It's better to say a few words and have fun. Empress was stunned at first, and then she sneered, You finally can't hold it anymore. Sun Lang blinked and said innocently, what? General Tensei narrowed her eyes and said slowly, It's no fun to pretend to be stupid. I have done a lot of things for the Emperor over the years, and I know a lot of his secret arrangements. If you want to remove the spies he'd buried in the early years while he is pretending to be sick and unconscious, you have to rely on my intelligence, right? If you want it, just say it. Sun Lang sat up straight and looked up with the expression of a golden retriever. I want it. The Emperor's concubine smiled and then refused concisely. No. Sun Lang was not surprised, as if he had expected this answer. He threw a flirtatious look at her and said, You are so naughty. You want to bargain with me again? How about this? You provide the intelligence, and I will smash the scene. We will split the profit 82. Empress said subconsciously, Okay, 80 for me and 20 for you. Sun Lang slammed the table and nodded, Deal. Empress was silent for a moment and said angrily, Are you scheming against me? Sun Lang yawned and said, It's a fair deal. Both sides are willing and honest. What's wrong with scheming? What are you talking about? I have given you 80% of the profit, and you only need to provide some intelligence while I have to work hard. What are you dissatisfied with? Empress was tongue-tied. She was just used to bargaining with Sun Lang, but instead, she was taken advantage of. The Emperor's arrangements over the years were huge. He had great power and wealth, which was enough to feed a terrible monster. The power he secretly controlled was very tempting even to Empress, who was in charge of Tensei Province. Obviously, if the huge power left by the Emperor while he was in a coma was controlled, it was enough to make Tensei Province have another huge leap. But Sun Lang didn't care about this, and he didn't even mind splitting the profit 82. This was an extremely shrewd guy who was never willing to suffer losses. What did you want to do? Empress suddenly said, You have to share any information and gains you find. Sun Lang showed a playful smile. Of course. Facing this smile, Her Royal Highness suddenly felt a chill for no reason. She always felt that Sun Lang knew something, but she didn't ask. Because she knew Sun Lang's temperament, and she also knew that many things had changed. The man in front of her would no longer hold back from her. If he didn't want to say it, then no matter how she asked, she wouldn't get the right answer. The two fell into silence. After a while, Empress whispered, How is Pingyang? Sun Lang said lightly, She's fine. She smiles happily every day, but she secretly cries for a while at night. The Empress concubine sighed. She thought for a while and asked, Do you really want to assist the first brother to succeed the throne? Sun Lang tilted his head and said, Why? Do you have any bold ideas? Empress opened her mouth, then shook her head and sighed. I'll go to the palace first. I've said enough today. She got up and walked past Sun Lang toward the door to the inner palace. Sun Lang shouted behind her, Hey, 82, you have to keep your word. Empress didn't even turn her head and waved her hand. Wait. Sun Lang watched Empress go in, then turned around and picked up a chopstick to hit the plate, making a crisp sound. He fell into deep thought. The game between him and the emperor had been going on. This old thing directed and acted out the trick of injuring himself to gain the emperor's confidence. Then he would take advantage of the situation and take drastic measures. Thinking like this, he said loudly, "Where are you? Pack up for me." Empress had already entered the inner palace. The eunuch who had been hiding on the side came over to lead the way, trembling. Ever since the emperor fell into a coma, the atmosphere in the inner palace and outside court had become strange. She didn't know if it was an illusion, but Empress felt a chill and sun ran for no reason as she walked in the palace. She looked around. She had been very familiar with every blade of grass and every tree here, but in just a few days, things had changed. Everything was different. Yuji Hall, the emperor's bedroom. After repeated confirmations and registrations, Empress finally saw the emperor on the sickbed. His eyes were tightly closed, and his face was pale. From time to time, he would show a pained expression. This was the emperor of the empire. Seeing this face again, Emperor Concubine's heart was filled with disgust and disgust. She knew that the person lying on the bed wasn't a heavily injured and weak old man, but an ambitious and ruthless person, an extremely selfish and cold-blooded monster. Including this assassination, it was only one part of his conspiracy. He was lying here with his eyes tightly closed, as if he was unaware of everything around him. But Empress knew that the emperor must be coldly and indifferently spying on everything. "Greetings, grandmother. Greetings, mother." Empress went forward and bowed. "Greetings, brother." "Sure, you came at the right time. Persuade your mother." The Empress Dowager looked unhappy. "This is nonsense." Empress looked at Empress with a questioning gaze. Empress, who had just been given the right to listen to government affairs, seemed to have the first idea. For 5 whole days, the best imperial doctors and the divine weapon eunuchs were helpless. If we give him another 5 days, will His Majesty get better? Empress said, "I think, for the sake of today, we need to seek talents from the court and the common people. We need to pool our ideas and find worthy people to cure His Majesty's injury." Empress heard this, and her heart sank. She didn't know why, but she had a very bad feeling. Chapter 1067. That night, there was a banquet at the Crown Prince's residence. Yes, it had been renamed to the Crown Prince's residence. The guest of honor was naturally the Shunsei general who had recently become famous in the capital. Li Jiansheng could finally get along with Sun Lang without any pressure. He no longer had to worry about people gossiping because his relationship with Sun Lang had been recognized by the emperor and was legally binding. The Crown Prince's residence was not decorated with lanterns or decorations, nor did he invite guests. After all, the emperor was still in a coma. If his son dared to be corrupt at this time, even Sun Lang would find it hard to protect him. "No, it can be protected." Sun Lang turned to Pangji beside him and said, "Just say that the Crown Prince is pure and filial." Seeing that the emperor's injuries have not healed, he is extremely worried and at a loss. Therefore, he decided to hold a banquet for his father to wash away the bad luck. Pangji was dumbfounded. "That's possible?" Sun Lang shook his head. "No, it can't, because I won't defend him like that. If Li Jiansheng is that stupid, it's better for me to find a way to kill him as soon as possible to prevent him from doing something even more stupid." Pangji nodded. "Yes, he's neither smart nor stupid. This is just right. If he wasn't smart, he wouldn't have too many crooked thoughts. If he wasn't stupid, he wouldn't be easily instigated by people with ulterior motives. This was just right. After all, there wasn't much difference between being rational and being cowardly." Sun Lang laughed and lightly gripped the handbrake. The luxurious handmade bicycle gifted by the country of a cute metal skidded for a distance on the smooth stone road before coming to a steady stop. The generals of the Heavens Yuan dynasty behind him also pulled back their reins, and their horses neighed incessantly. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who had been waiting at the door, led his subordinates and officials to welcome him with a smile. He bowed. "This disciple pays his respects to Master." Pei Ju and the others also bowed. Greetings to the Grand Preceptor. Sun Lang smiled and cupped his hands. No need to be so courteous. No need to be so courteous. From today onwards, we're all in the same boat. We'll get promoted together and get rich together, right? Everybody seemed to already know the general's temperament and loose tongue. One after another, they ignored the subtle words in his words. Li Jiansheng bowed respectfully, inviting Sun Lang to enter. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince might not be a genius, but that was only in comparison to a monster like Empress. As long as there was no problem with intelligence, how could there be a brainless idiot after being taught and nurtured by the royal system? The Hutu kingdom was not like the great Ming dynasty, where the vassals were raised like pigs. Li Jinsheng's mind was actually very clear. Furthermore, he still had a few capable strategists. This afternoon, Wang Gui and Pei Zhu had already given him a full analysis of the current situation. If the previous cooperation was said to be because he had no choice but to ask a tiger for its skin due to the circumstances, then the current situation was very different. The emperor had made him the Grand Preceptor, which meant that from today onwards, Sun Lang and the Crown Prince were indeed standing on the same boat. If anything happened to the Crown Prince, Sun Lang, as his teacher, would not be able to escape responsibility. The Crown Prince recalled the conversation he had with the two strategists in the afternoon and couldn't help but shiver. His eyes even flickered with resentment. At that time, he still had a trace of naivety. Look, if something happened to the Crown Prince, as his teacher, Sun Lang, as his teacher, would not be able to escape responsibility. However, if something happened to Sun Lang, as his teacher, he, as the Crown Prince, seemed to be able to stay out of it. Did this mean that the relationship between him and Sun Lang could be slightly changed? However, Pei Zhu and Wang Gui's opinions on this matter were surprisingly consistent. These two fellows, only when they were angrily rebuking and attacking him would they agree on the same thing. The Crown Prince remembered the words of these two trusted strategists. The tightly shut door, the flickering candlelight, and the swaying gazes of the two men in the changing light and shadow, uttering words that made him feel suffocated. Your Highness, as I expected, you have been used as bait by the Emperor. Sun Lang's laughter woke the Crown Prince from his deep thoughts. He broke away from his recent memories. Looking at Sun Lang, complex emotions flashed through his eyes. There was fear, disgust, and also anticipation. He knew that his future and life were perhaps indeed linked to this person's. The Crown Prince was even more enthusiastic. He personally took on the role of welcoming the guests and led Sun Lang and the other generals into the Great Hall. The spacious hall was large enough to accommodate over 100 people. Pei Zhu acted as the master of ceremonies and led everyone to their seats in an orderly manner. The hosts and guests on both sides were clearly distinguished. Sun Lang sat at the head of the table, accompanied by the Crown Prince. The two sides sat down according to their age, position, and experience. Li Jiansheng clapped his hands, and the melodious sound of musical instruments rang out. Beautiful maids shuttled in like butterflies, bringing out fine wine and delicacies. The aroma wafted through the air and refreshed the mind. Different from the delicacies in front of everyone else, the Crown Prince's table was filled with simple dishes such as tofu and vegetables. He said apologetically, "Pleasure is not pleasure, and wine is not enough to fill one's stomach. After all, these are special times. Father's injuries have not yet recovered. As a lonely son, how can I be greedy for pleasure? However, today is also a special day, and I cannot neglect my master." Sun Lang casually tore off a drumstick and said with a smile, "Then we'll eat. You watch." His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was startled, and then said, "Everyone, please do as you please." The beautiful maid stood behind everyone, eagerly waiting on them. For a moment, there were coquettish voices, gentle and soft, and light chuckles. It was indeed refreshing to have beauties by your side, serving you wholeheartedly. Sun Lang, as the leader of the highest rank present and the master appointed by His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, naturally received the best treatment. The two women standing by his side, serving him, were the two most beautiful women present. One had a gentle expression, and the other was as cold as frost. They were both tall beauties with slender waists, long legs, ample breasts, and perky buttocks. Clearly, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had done a thorough investigation and had a deep understanding and grasp of his new master's tastes. He felt that this arrangement of his was perfect. After all, there were rumors that this master was known as the Virgin Chicken of Jinling, commonly known as a virgin. He was the rarest species in the Tianyuan army. Although he was skeptical about this, the beauty's attack was indeed very effective. This was because he could acutely sense that when the two beauties walked over, the general's sharp gaze changed dozens of times in a single breath. It was obvious that he had used his gaze to lick the other party's body. Regardless of whether the rumors were true or false, today's matter should be successful. Excellent, excellent. The Crown Prince glanced at the two women behind Sun Lang and collected his thoughts. Then, he sighed at the fickleness of fate. These two beauties were cultivated from a young age. Everything they learned about literature, martial arts, zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting was to please men. He had also spent a large amount of money to obtain them, but he had not touched them until now. This was because he had greater ambitions, and these two beauties should be of greater use to him. Now it was time to use them. You two have really profited, he thought to himself. To be able to consecrate commander of war's treasured spear, even the graves of their ancestors would smoke. To be able to serve such an outstanding person was a blessing cultivated from 3 lifetimes. He calmed his mind and suppressed the pity and disappointment in his heart. The beauties were indeed beautiful, but what he pursued was the position of supremacy. As long as he became the emperor, what were beauties to him? His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince smiled and said, "Master, you entered the capital alone, beside your all former subordinates. It's good for the soldiers to go into battle and kill, but it's too careless to do some delicate work. Master, you don't have anyone to serve you," Sun Lang smiled and said. "I don't have anyone to serve you." Ping Yang was an expert at doing housework. She knew how to make the bed, fold the blanket, do the laundry, cook, and serve tea. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was startled at first. He thought that Sun Lang was scolding him. The word, "your sister," was originally very normal, but it became a curse word in the Empire. The reason for this change was that Sun Lang had been tirelessly spreading and communicating culture. He had been in the Empire for so many years and had successfully brought many new words to Hutu. At first, they were only circulated in the army. Later, they were brought to the imperial court by the ruffians and then slowly popularized. Well, most of the words that could be brought to the imperial court by the ruffians were cursing words. But this was also a part of culture. It was undeniable that Sun Lang had indeed contributed to the culture of the empire. If later generations of scholars studied the social culture of this period, they would not be able to avoid the name of Sun Lang. Anyway, people who could add new words to any vocabulary were all amazing people. After a while, Li Jianxing realized that it was indeed his sister. Ping Yang, the image of a timid and taciturn girl, appeared in his mind. The emperor had many children, and each of them had different social relationships. There were those who were glorious, like the emperor's concubine, and there were also those who were unknown, like Ping Yang. In reality, the reason why the princes remembered Ping Yang's name was because the emperor's concubine was her sister, and also because she was lucky enough to become the disciple of the war marshal. Thinking of this, the crown prince smiled and said, "Ping Yang, speaking of which, we are really fated to be master. It turns out that both of us have become your disciples." He then changed the topic. "Although my younger sister is willing to endure hardships, there are some things that can't be done. These two young ladies are clean and pure. They have never touched a man since they were young. If master doesn't mind, please accept them. They can be servants who serve tea and water." He gave a meaningful look, and the two beauties showed enchanting smiles. They slowly knelt down and rubbed against General Shen's body like kittens. Sun Lang suddenly raised his hand. The two beauties were shocked at first, but their good training and obedience immediately made them stop moving. They lowered their eyes, their long eyelashes flickering, and waited silently. The Crown Prince said in shock, "Master." Sun Lang turned his head and looked at his subordinates. The Crown Prince followed his gaze and couldn't help but be shocked. These beautiful concubines of his were all carefully selected. They had even been trained and taught by the professional madams of the Copper Sparrow Terrace. They were all used to observing people's expressions and expressions. Their eyes and smiles could display astonishing charm. He had arranged this program tonight to let Sun Lang and his people have a good time. After all, he had already asked around. Although this group of people had occupied the Copper Sparrow Terrace for a long time, they had not violated anything. Not to mention flirting, they had not even made a proper transaction. Wouldn't he explode from holding it in? But contrary to his expectations, the generals under Sun Lang's command all seemed to be upright gentlemen. Every one of them sat upright and still, serious in speech and manner. They didn't even look at the beauty beside them. They were more virtuous than the eminent monks. In stark contrast, his own advisors and subordinates were sitting across from him. Everyone was very familiar with the young ladies around them and started to tease them. Although they didn't hug each other because of the occasion, some people had already started to touch each other's little hands and other small actions. He said in shock, "Master, is this disciple's arrangement not good?" Sun Lang glanced at his obedient subordinates and said gently, "I've made a fool of myself. This is not your fault. To tell you the truth, they are all virgins and have no courage. They even stutter when talking to women. With the young ladies next to them, they are nervous. Your arrangement is wasted. Have the young ladies all leave." His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince looked confused, but if I remember correctly, many of them are married. I even went to the full moon banquet of General Android's son. Sun Lang's smile did not change, and he continued, "Those who are married are all henpecked men who are scared of their wives. When they hear that their wives are coming, they are so scared that they can't control themselves. Don't push them into the fire pit." Li Jiansheng was even more confused. He had even seen many of the people here in the famous brothels of the imperial capital. Sun Lang turned his head and said with a smile, "Don't you think so?" Everyone swallowed their anger and said, "Yes, yes." But they all cursed in their hearts at the same time. "Damn it, Virgin, you don't have the guts to play, and you are actually hindering us from playing. It was like this in the past, and it is still like this now." His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had no choice but to wave his hand. The beauties left in disappointment. Sun Lang said again, "Do you have any handsome boys in your residence? Give each of them one. I want the kind that is gentle, considerate, and obedient." Li Jiansheng looked at the steward. The steward understood and left to prepare. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince looked at the two young ladies behind Sun Lang. "Master, these two," Sun Lang sighed and said softly, "It is a good time and beautiful scenery. I should not disappoint the beauties, but I already have someone in my heart. Although I do something here and no one here dares to say it out loud, but this cannot deceive my own heart. Okay, I understand. The saying of Jean Ling's virgin is indeed true." His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince felt that it was funny, but he also felt a little relieved. These two beauties were indeed very impressive. Although it was worth it to give them to Sun Lang, he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Since it was like this, then it was fine. Just as he was about to ask the two slightly disappointed beauties to leave, he heard Sun Lang say, "But Ping Yang is here with me. She is a golden branch and jade leaves, and there is no one to take care of her. Since His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince is so generous, I can't refuse. Then I will take it as you taking care of your sister. How about it? F***CK. I can't F***CK her, and I won't let you F***CK her." His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince could only agree. At this time, the handsome boys came in. The apprenticeship banquet began under such circumstances. The air was filled with a subtle atmosphere. Li Jiansheng signaled Pei Ju several times, but Pei Ju slowly shook his head. Now was not the time. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince smiled and proposed a toast to Sun Lang. However, in his heart, he thought, No, I have to find a chance to discuss that matter with Sun Lang. Mother is stubborn. I feel uneasy. Chapter 1068. The banquet went on in an awkward atmosphere. Because the people who served Sun Lang's generals were all handsome and charming boys, the handsome faces of the young masters contrasted with the ashen complexion of Pang Ji and the others. This way, the officials and officials of the Crown Prince's residence wouldn't be able to hug the beautiful young ladies and make out. After all, the purpose of tonight's banquet was to make friends and not to make enemies. Thus, Pei Ju gave the steward a look. The steward understood and let a group of boys in to replace the young ladies around the Crown Prince's residence. Thus, the banquet's eroticism level dropped by 5 stars. Everyone became gentlemen in an instant. They didn't smile and were full of authority. Only a small number of people showed an excited expression. Pei Ju and the others joked and joked, so the situation wasn't too awkward. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 flavors of food, Sun Lang stood up and stretched. I'm going to pee. The Crown Prince couldn't wait any longer. He hurriedly stood up. I'll see you off, teacher. He led Sun Lang from the front hall to the back hall. The 2 sides of the hall were brightly lit, as if it was daytime. The 2 walked through the long corridor. Along the way, the servants bowed their heads to avoid them. Their eyes were filled with awe and excitement. Because the great prince had become the Crown Prince, everyone here had the opportunity to soar to the sky. Sun Lang asked, how many spies did your father plan in your family? His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince, who was walking in front, trembled. He said in a low voice, at least 3. This was only what he knew. Have you pulled them out? Not yet. Pull them out. Good. Sun Lang turned his head in surprise. So obedient? The Crown Prince was silent for a moment. Then he gritted his teeth and said, today, Her Highness Empress has a suggestion. What? Li Jiansheng said slowly. Face the court and recruit capable people to treat father's injury. Sun Lang stopped in his tracks, and his expression gradually became playful. The Crown Prince also stopped and said softly, teacher, please enlighten me. Sun Lang thought for a moment. Then he asked, what do you think? Disciple feels uneasy. The Crown Prince said, father's injury was caused by the sword of Jupiter. No matter how high a mortal's cultivation is or how good their medical skills are, how can they treat an injury caused by a sacred sword? Her Highness Empress is well-educated and knowledgeable. There's no way she doesn't understand this. Middle-aged women with long hair and short knowledge are easy to coax and lack of opinions. This is also very normal. Sun Lang said with a smile. Empress is already at her age. It's not strange for her to believe in the words of healthcare experts, masters of traditional Chinese studies, direct selling geniuses, swimming coaches, and professors who studied abroad. The Crown Prince asked blankly, what are you talking about, teacher? Don't worry about it. Sun Lang said with an amiable expression. What I mean is after Emperor's suggestion is implemented, within 3 days at most, there will definitely be a miraculous doctor coming to treat your Majesty's injuries slowly. The Crown Prince's expression changed. He forced a smile and said, teacher, why are you so sure? Sun Lang said indifferently, you don't have to worry about that. I just know that the crux of the problem isn't this. He looked at Li Jiansheng and said faintly, the question is, do you want this to happen? His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince's eyes flickered intensely. After a while, he said in a low voice, father's injury was caused by the sacred sword. Only the power of the Imperial Army can cure it. Even if there are talented people in the court, they can't do anything. Moreover, Ling Mu Li is still on the run. He might have accomplices. If the thief finds an opportunity to sneak into the palace and continue his unfinished assassination, who can bear this responsibility? Therefore, Li Jianxing's voice had been trembling at first, but now it slowly became firm. He said resolutely, therefore, Mother's suggestion should be rejected. We can't take risks at such a critical time. Sun Lang laughed. It's very regrettable. He said, even if you convince the Empress Dowager and join forces with Tensei and me to reject Empress's suggestion, it won't help. The crown prince was puzzled. Why? Sun Lang said slowly. Because after you reject Empress's suggestion, it won't be long before His Majesty, who is fighting with the mark of the Time Star, will wake up again and agree to Empress's suggestion. The crown prince's body trembled. Facing Sun Lang's serene gaze, he couldn't help but take a step back. He muttered, Then a mysterious person will enter the palace. Sun Lang said faintly, He healed the scars left by Mu Yao. He saved His Majesty. He gained the friendship of the royal family. He gained the trust of the Empress. He may be conferred a messy official position, such as the state preceptor. He may become the person pushed to the front by the Emperor. Li Jianqing's pupils constricted. Who is he? Sun Lang chuckled. You don't know him. But is that important? Yes, it's not important. The crown prince asked a more important question. What does he want to do? Deal with me. Sun Lang pointed at Li Jianqing. Through you. This is also the Emperor's intention. Because I'm the crown prince's grand tutor. If you cause a big mess, I will bear the responsibility. Do you understand? Sun Lang smiled. A chess piece? The crown prince's breathing became heavier. He clenched his fists and exhaled fiercely. His eyes became ferocious. No one wanted to be used as a chess piece, not to mention that this was related to the throne. He was the crown prince, the future emperor. No one could take away the throne of the 9 and 5 from him. He went down on one knee and said in a low voice, Jianqing will live and die with my teacher. Sun Lang tilted his head. So straightforward. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince said coldly, This afternoon, Mr. Wang and Mr. Pei talked to me. Both of them have the same view as my teacher. I am a chess piece and bait used by my father to deal with you. Sun Lang curled his finger. Li Jianqing stood up involuntarily. Then our war with the Emperor will begin. I will do as my teacher says. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince gritted his teeth and took out a token from his sleeve. He bowed and handed it to Sun Lang. All the resources of the Crown Prince's residence will be at your disposal. Sun Lang did not take it. Instead, he narrowed his eyes. There's no turning back. Li Jianqing said calmly. What else can we do? At the end of the other path, there's only a dead end for the vanity. Good. Sun Lang took the token. From now on, I will protect you. The banquet ended. Both the guests and the host enjoyed themselves. The Crown Prince's position as regent was recognized by the Emperor. Sun Lang was given the title of Crown Prince's imperial tutor. Shinto Province and the Crown Prince's residence were in the same boat. Their reputation increased greatly. Under the vigilance of all parties in the imperial court, the Crown Prince's residence, which had received powerful support and a legitimate status, was like an ambitious young lion, roaring greedily. Tensei Province will provide intelligence. The Crown Prince's residence will provide manpower, and Shinto Province will watch the show. A hall in the Copper Sparrow Terrace had been transformed into a meeting room. The generals who had eaten their fill under the service of the cute boys looked very unhappy. They looked at the general and scolded him. Does the emperor think that by putting on a show and hiding in bed, he will be able to retreat behind the scenes and avoid my blade? Sun Lang's saliva flew everywhere as he said, Dream on. If he wants to act, he will have to see if I follow his script. Didn't Li Guangyuan get assassinated and faint? Then I will destroy his nest first. Ma Shering hesitated. You want to cooperate with Empress? It's just limited intelligence sharing. Don't worry, I know what to do. Sun Lang said slowly. I know her better than all of you combined, so I won't have any illusions. No one knows Sun Lang better than me. I know his personality. He won't trust me anymore. Of course, I won't trust him anymore, so you don't have to worry. In Tensei Province, Empress was reading the intelligence sent back. Tonight, Jianqing invited Sun Lang to a banquet. Although there were no decorations, as the crown prince, he was bound to be closely watched by the imperial court. This kind of thing couldn't be hidden from anyone. Of course, the crown prince didn't want to hide it. Leaving the banquet for a secret meeting, Tensei Province's intelligence network was very strong. Empress had the temperament of an emperor, so she had long regarded the princes as competitors. Naturally, She had placed chess pieces in the crown prince's residence. Now, she had the information sent back by the informants in the crown prince's residence. The content was very detailed. What people said during the banquet, Sun Lang's many speeches, and the matter of the young ladies and young men. Also, Prince Chung Chung gifted 2 stunning beauties to General Shunsei, who accepted it with a smile. Empress read this matter several times and felt that the small words were very eye-catching. After a while, she sneered a few times. If I can't control you, someone will. She quickly threw this small matter to the back of her mind. Li Jiansheng had invited Sun Lang to a banquet, and the key to the entire banquet had been the words leaving the banquet for a secret meeting. Sun Lang and the crown prince had left the banquet at the same time, and the most crucial meeting had taken place at that time. Alas, no matter how formidable the informants in the crown prince's residence were, they had never been able to find out the contents of the secret meeting. After all, Sun Lang was so powerful that even the most profound aura concealment art could not escape his senses. This was a world where martial arts flourished. Once one reached a certain level of strength, many methods and schemes would become useless. But it's also very easy to guess. The emperor's concubine put down the secret report in her hands. The emperor conferred Sun Lang as the crown prince's imperial tutor and tied him to the same boat as eldest imperial brother. He clearly has ill intentions and wants to use eldest imperial brother to deal with Sun Lang. The Tensei officials glanced at each other, and Ho Junji said in shock, "In order to deal with Sun Lang, the emperor is willing to give up a crown prince? This price is far too high." Qin Xiong said indifferently, "It's worth this price." Zhongsun Wuji's eyes flickered, and he suddenly said, "If that's the case, the first prince's position as the crown prince is not stable. Doesn't this mean?" Everyone's spirits were lifted. Everyone had followed Empress for a long time and respected her strategy, bearing, ability, and grace. They felt that even though her highness was a woman, she was better than any man in the world. Why couldn't she become the emperor? Over the years, they had followed Empress to the north and south and watched as her highness grew step by step, gaining the admiration of the people of the world and gaining the trust of His Majesty. All along, Empress Tensei had been a popular candidate for the crown prince. They all believed that with her highness's ability, she would definitely win His Majesty's favor and become the crown prince, even inheriting the throne. At that time, they would all be meritorious officials who had risen from the throne. This was the biggest motivation for them to move forward. But just a few days ago, their dreams were shattered. The position of the crown prince had landed on Li Jianqing's head. It was simply a dark horse among dark horses. For a moment, everyone was like a salted fish that had lost their dreams. Even their hearts were shaken. But now, Zhongsun Wuji's words ignited a glimmer of hope in everyone. If His Majesty pushed out Prince Chung Chung to deal with Sun Lang, this meant that Li Jiansheng would not be the crown prince for long. Didn't this mean that Her Highness still had a chance? Everyone looked at Empress, and there was a glimmer of hope in the depths of their eyes. In such a situation, they should at least wait and see, or still stand on His Majesty's side and cooperate. When necessary, they should give the crown prince and Sun Lang a heavy blow and contribute to His Majesty. Perhaps there would be hope for the crown prince. What kind of person was Empress? How could she not know what everyone was thinking? If it wasn't for what happened that night, she would most likely have such thoughts now. But there was already a ravine that could never be closed between her and the emperor. It was filled with suspicion, hatred, uneasiness, and scheming, and it was gradually expanding. She already did not believe in the emperor, and the emperor would not believe in her anymore, because they were the same kind of people. Both father and daughter had the qualities of an emperor. They were suspicious, gloomy, mean, and suspicious. They were not willing to entrust their safety to others. But how could he tell such things to her? She was silent for a moment and said lightly, "No." Although everyone's expression was shaken, they still maintained their calm. They were all waiting for Empress's explanation. This was a trust and tacit understanding accumulated for fighting side by side for many years. The emperor did not reveal anything to me. He did not order me to cooperate with him. He does not trust me. Zhongsun Wuji said, This might be a test. Test? Empress sneered in her heart. This time, I suddenly understood a principle in the matter of appointing the crown prince. The only thing worth relying on is the comrades who are united by life and death, she said slowly. Once the emperor opens his mouth, whoever he says will be the crown prince will be the crown prince. Can such a crown prince sit steadily? Like Jiansheng, who has to be Sun Lang's puppet and rely on that madman's support and protection to sit firmly on the crown prince position and even become the center of the struggle between the emperor and Sun Lang. What is the point of being such a crown prince? How can one be at ease with such a crown prince? Du Kemming said in a low voice, Your Highness, what do you mean? I want to take the crown prince position myself and not try my best to please the emperor. My many years of dedication and loyalty will not be reciprocated. Empress said, For this reason, I can temporarily cooperate with Sun Lang. Our greatest enemy is the emperor. Once we get rid of the emperor, Empress will not be a problem. Therefore, we can first cooperate with Tensei province and take advantage of the emperor. Also, don't look at me like that. Am I someone who can't walk when I see a woman? In the Copper Sparrow Pavilion, Sun Lang was talking about his strategic ideas. But unlike Tensei province, the atmosphere here was more relaxed, not only because of the different personalities of the generals, but also because of the situation that both sides were facing. Sun Lang's side was obviously more relaxed. Therefore, someone asked, the crown prince sent the two beauties here. General, are you going to sleep with them tonight? Sun Lang glared and said, Bullshit. They're the maids prepared for Pingyang. A few people were deep in thought, and, at the same time, they made a mental note in their little notebooks. On a certain day, the crown prince invited a virgin chicken to make trouble. This grudge has been recorded, and retribution is not far away. When the time is right, they will complain, saying that this little brat was raised outside the residence. Oomph, oomph, oomph. Sun Lang looked around at everyone with a gloomy expression. What are you all thinking? Those two women are the maids that Pingyang brought out from the palace. We have to be unified on this matter. If anyone leaks this in the future. He looked around disdainfully, his eyes full of murderous intent. His tiger body shook violently, and he released his domineering aura. He said proudly, I will kneel on the washboard and beg for their forgiveness. Then I will beat around the bush and find out who the informant is. At that time, you all just wait. The face that I lost will definitely be returned 1,000 times over. He actually said this kind of thing so confidently. While everyone despised Sun Lang's backbone, they also felt a chill in their hearts. Today's grudge would not be easy to take revenge. Yin Song was puzzled. You clearly don't have the guts to do this, so why did you accept the women sent by His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince? Sun Lang's voice went up an octave. Yin Song fully displayed the strength of a scholar. I mean, you are obviously a decent man who keeps your chastity. Why did you accept the women sent by His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince? Sun Lang was satisfied, and then he rolled his eyes. It's none of your business. He kicked the chair at his feet to the side. I'm done. The meeting is adjourned. The Empress will probably send a letter tomorrow. General Shensei left the meeting hall and returned to his room on the 7th floor. Princess Pingyang was already waiting at the stairs. She trotted up to him. Master, the two women are already in your room. Good. Sun Lang said, Guard the door for me. If they don't listen to me and barge in, chop them to death. Chapter 1069. Good. Sun Lang said, Guard the door for me. If anyone tries to barge in and doesn't listen, chop them to death. Pingyang nodded subconsciously. Yes. Then she showed a conflicted expression. Sun Lang was keenly aware of this. What's wrong? Her Royal Highness hesitated and then whispered, Teacher, what do you want to do? Sun Lang revealed a reserved expression and pulled up his belt. Secret, secret, search, 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 search. His little disciple curled her lips and whispered, Liar. Sun Lang stared. Ping Yang hurriedly changed the topic. Teacher, you want to investigate their background? General Shunsei was stunned for a moment, and then said angrily, why do you think that a young and vigorous man like me would only investigate their background after drinking wine in the middle of the night and bringing two beautiful young ladies who were given to me back to a luxurious suite? Her Royal Highness blinked her big eyes. Teacher, you are a good man who has never been stained by a single leaf. You keep your chastity like jade. You don't have sexual desires. You respect women, and you know self-control. Why would you do such a thing to girls you just met today? You accepted the gift from First Brother to protect them, right? Sun Lang was silent for a moment and was speechless. After a while, he nodded. Yes, that is indeed the case. Princess Ping Yang smiled. Teacher, don't worry. I will explain it to Sister Shui and the others for you. General Shunsei said proudly, I, Sun Lang, don't need to explain my actions to women. Her Royal Highness curled her lips. You were so anxious when Sister Shui cried. Sun Lang glared at him and raised his hand, ready to flick his head. Princess Ping Yang heard the sound of the wind approaching and had already closed her eyes and shrunk her neck, ready to eat this. However, after a while, there was no movement. She opened her eyes a little and saw that Sun Lang had already withdrawn his hand. His little disciple felt very lonely. Why didn't teacher hit me? Sun Lang looked at her coldly. What do you mean? Ping Yang whispered. Ever since I came back, Master didn't even hit me anymore. Sun Lang was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, Because you've grown up. The princess pouted. But I'm still Master's disciple. General Shunsei nodded. I see. All right, come on. Take off your pants and face me with your butt. The little disciple was stunned for a moment, and then said with a red face, W.H. Sun Lang exercised his wrists. Ping Yang, you've grown up. You can't hit my head anymore. If you really want to hit me, then I'll hit your butt. Come on, turn around. With a swooshing sound, Her Royal Highness flashed 10 meters away. Little girl, you still want to fight with me? Seriously, you're always joking with your disciple. You're really disrespectful. Princess Ping Yang's face was still red. She glared at Sun Lang with dissatisfaction, but this kind of glare was not threatening at all. Instead, it looked very cute. She did not dare to mention this matter again, and could only resentfully change the topic. But Master is still worried about them, right? Sun Lang nodded and said, Li Jiansheng has just formed an alliance with me. If I don't accept his gifts, he'll be very nervous. But I can't let my guard down. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince doesn't have the guts to plant any spies around me, and he wouldn't dare to use such a simple and straightforward honey trap. But he turned his head and looked at the room. The two beauties were inside. They were gentle, and as beautiful as flowers. And from the start, they were completely unlocked, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. General Shunsei smiled and said, although they're not Li Jianqing spies, they could be spies of other families. I want to see if there will be any unexpected surprises. Princess Ping Yang thought for a moment and said, Master is a man after all, and he's very polite and upright. He's not good at dealing with women. Why don't you let me do it? Sun Lang choked again. He looked left and right, trying to see if there was any trace of evil in her. But all he saw on her beautiful face was as pure as a clear spring. This little disciple was still the same as before. She was inflexible, silly, and cute. She was a stark contrast to her sister. The two of them were like two complete opposites. He hesitated and said, Can you do it? Princess Ping Yang smiled and said, In any case, Master will eventually hand them over to me, won't he? Sun Lang snorted and said, Who said so? These two young ladies are as beautiful as flowers, and they're gentle and obedient. It'll be pleasing to the eye if I keep them by my side to serve them. Princess Ping Yang smiled and said, It doesn't matter even if Sister Shui and the others come. Sun Lang was about to hit her, but Princess Ping Yang had already pushed the door open with a smile. She said a few words to the two young ladies inside, then turned to look at Sun Lang. She blinked and said with a smile, Master, trust me. I've learned a lot in these 2 years. Looking at the familiar smile in front of him, Sun Lang's heart skipped a beat. He thought for a while and nodded slowly. Okay, you two can follow Princess Pingyang for the time being. Serve her well. The two young ladies inside looked disappointed, but they knew their duty. They also understood that they couldn't refuse any request of this man, so they bowed and followed Pingyang out of the room. Pingyang smiled and said, "Thank you, master." Sun Lang nodded and said, "Sleep early. Don't be careless." The princess nodded and left with the two slightly puzzled and disappointed beauties. The fragrance lingered in the air. Sun Lang's nose caught a whiff of that delicate fragrance, and he flicked his fingers lightly. Two exclamations sounded almost at the same time. Princess Pingyang turned around in surprise and saw the two young ladies. They were surprised, and their eyebrows were rippling. Bright red clouds appeared on their pretty faces, and they looked like beauties in spring. "Don't be nervous. Be careful," Sun Lang said behind her. "Pingyang is a very nice person." Then he went back into the room and closed the door. Princess Pingyang was stunned for a moment, then said, "Please follow me." The next day, Sun Lang had just gotten up when there was a knock on the door. After receiving a response, Pingyang came in with toiletries and breakfast. "Good morning, master." She had learned this way of greeting from Sun Lang. Sun Lang washed his face and brushed his teeth. Pingyang was making the bed for him. She said casually, "Those two young ladies probably don't know anything. I already asked them last night. There's no problem." "Oh, then I'll leave them with you first." "Okay. Also, master, there's a morning court session today. The lords are already waiting downstairs." "I know. I'll go down after breakfast. I'll help you put on your court robes." "No need. I can do it myself." "Oh." Very quickly, Sun Lang finished putting on the uniform of a first-class general. It forcefully turned this guy's sloppy temperament into a dignified one. He said, "All right, it's time to go to work." Pingyang suddenly said, "Master." Sun Lang raised his eyebrows. "Yes?" The little girl hesitated for a moment, then said softly, "Master, you don't have to worry about me." Just like before, they didn't care about my feelings. Whatever master does is what he should do. Sun Lang smiled and tapped her forehead. "Little brat, you don't have to worry about me." Pingyang snorted. "Last night you said that I've grown up." The Shinsei general smiled and pushed the door open. The generals were already waiting downstairs. Soon, under the gazes of many pairs of eyes, they walked in the direction of the palace. The second court session since the assassination of His Majesty was about to begin. The sky was just beginning to brighten. The chill in the palace had not yet dissipated. The ceremonial officials sang praises and the officials entered. However, the part where the emperor of the empire was absent from the highest political meeting of the country was missing. The crown prince, as the regent of the country, stood below the steps of the imperial court. His position was higher than that of the officials. Then, the eunuch called out, the loyal officials saluted, and the crown prince bowed. The current mother of the country, Empress Feng, had arrived. Empress was here to listen to the imperial edict. The first-rank officials still only bowed to show their respect. Sun Lang did not even bend his waist. He raised his eyes and looked directly at Empress, revealing a brilliant smile. Of course, he only received a fierce glare in return. He threw a flirtatious glance at her again. Empress wanted to get angry again, but she held it in. Although she lived in the depths of the palace all year round and did not have a big picture, she still knew the situation and could distinguish the importance of things. This was the outer court and not the inner court. It was not her territory where she had the final say. This was the world of the foreign officials. A group of officials who were in the right even dared to scold the emperor, let alone her, Empress. No matter what, she could not act rashly. Li Jiansheng discovered Sun Lang's little movements and felt waves of pain in his balls. This teacher was good at everything. He had finesse, courage, skill, and strength, but he was too good at causing trouble. He was afraid that Sun Lang and his mother would have some kind of conflict, so he quickly announced the first thing first. In the court, he read out the emperor's edict from yesterday. The crown prince would be the regent of the country. Empress would listen to the imperial court, and Sun Lang would be the crown prince's grand tutor. Although the imperial edict had already been sent out, It was at least a formality in front of the officials. The reading went smoothly, and no one jumped out to oppose it. After all, the first-rank officials had already reached a consensus yesterday. After the Crown Prince finished reading the imperial edict, he waited for everyone to finish before saying, "Officials, if there is a memorial, please step out." At this moment, Empress slowly said, "Crown Prince, please wait." Jinxing's heart skipped a beat. He glanced at Sun Lang and said in his heart, "It's here." He bowed and said, "Mother, I am listening to your teachings." Empress took 2 steps forward with the support of a eunuch. Her phoenix coronet swayed, and her bearing was graceful and dignified. She looked around and swept her gaze across the entire room. She brought out the majesty and posture of someone in charge of the 6 palaces. However, no one felt her majesty. The officials quietly watched as she posed pretentiously. Sun Lang laughed in his heart. He really wanted to express his own opinion and joy. He looked around and found Li Tonggu, who was also in the front row. He then transmitted his voice. "Sir Li, look at Empress's bird appearance. She's like a peacock with its tail open. She really thinks she's some kind of dish." Li Tonggu suddenly heard Sun Lang's voice and was shocked. He almost jumped up. Then, he realized that this was Sun Lang's secret transmission. His face turned ashen. He turned his head and glared fiercely at Sun Lang. "What are you glaring at me for? What do you want to report me? Report it. Say it out loud and say that I'm sending you a secret message. Let's see if others will believe it. Let's see if they can find out. So let's talk. Do you know what the Empress wants to do? This move seems to be very useful. If Sir Li offends me in the future, I'll use my secret transmission to call you an idiot 10,000 times." Sir Li was about to explode. Fortunately, Empress reacted quickly. She realized that the officials had completely ignored Her Majesty. After cursing a few times in her heart, she slowly said, "I have something to say. Please listen carefully." She revealed a pained expression. "Everyone in the court knows about what happened a few days ago. His Majesty was assassinated, and the murderer is at large. The Majesty of the Empire is lying on the dragon bed in a coma. Although there are many national experts in the Imperial Academy of Medicine and the Imperial Palace's Sacred Artifact Supervisor, His Majesty's injuries have yet to be healed." Everyone shouted, "Long live," to show their concern and love for His Majesty. Empress continued, "The country can't be without a ruler. I've already given the Imperial Academy of Medicine and the Imperial Palace 5 days, but they're still unable to do anything about His Majesty's injuries. His Majesty's injuries can't be delayed any longer. Therefore, I think that we should visit all the capable people in the court to treat His Majesty's injuries." The Golden Hall was silent for a moment, and then there was an uproar. Waves of opposition sounded. There was no need for any connection or greeting. Any rational official would not agree to this seemingly hasty and absurd proposal. "Your Majesty, I have an objection. The Imperial Academy of Medicine has gathered all the national experts in the world, and the Imperial Palace is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Even the Imperial Academy of Medicine and the Imperial Palace find it difficult to treat His Majesty's injuries. What can the people in the court do? His Majesty was assassinated, and the culprit fled far away. There may be accomplices of the culprit hidden in the capital. If they take the opportunity to sneak into the palace and come to His Majesty, what should we do then? Your Majesty, may I ask why His Majesty's injuries have yet to be healed? Who injured His Majesty?" A cacophony of questions rang out one after another. After all, the Emperor was not here, and the Crown Prince was young. The arrogant officials in the court did not take Empress seriously at all. They were fine when it was quiet, but now that they were noisy, no one could suppress them. At this moment, Empress suddenly took out the Luan Phoenix Heavenly Scripture. The motherly treasure emitted a brilliant light, and the heavy power of the Imperial Army instantly intimidated everyone. The officials gradually quieted down. "Silence." Empress said, "I will answer your questions. His Majesty's injuries are so serious that the Imperial Academy of Medicine and the Sacred Instruments Bureau are helpless. The reason is none other than the expressions of the first-rank officials changed slightly. The fact that Ling Mu Li was the culprit behind the emperor's assassination was only known by a small circle. After all, the culprit was a sword saint. If the news spread out, it would definitely cause a violent uproar. Not only would it greatly damage the reputation of the seven luminary sword saint, but it would also dampen the morale of the martial artists. After all, the seven luminary sword saint was admired and worshipped by too many people. But today someone stopped her. "Your Majesty," Empress glanced at him and then said loudly, "because the culprit who assassinated the emperor is the wood luminary's sword saint, Mu Li." Shock, noise, disbelief, and a huge uproar. Amidst the chaos, Sun Lang's eyes became incomparably sharp. "I know what you want to do." Chapter 1070. There was an uproar. It was as if a bomb had been thrown into a calm lake. There was a deafening roar and a huge wave. The shock wave pushed the water vapor and spread out. All the officials of the empire were shocked and exclaimed, because that was the seven luminary sword saint. The ultimate force of the empire, the deterrence of Hutu's power, was the pride and dignity of the country. The significance of this was too great. Therefore, the officials of the empire all chose to block the news. They did not even touch Ling Muli's clansmen, even though the sword mark of Jupiter remained on the emperor, even though there was no doubt that Ling Muli was a suspect. Because if this news were to spread, the consequences would be too severe. The pride and honor that generations of sword saints had built with blood and sacrifice in the decades of chaos of Tianyuan would be shaken. The light of Hutu's martial arts would be covered in dust. Even the empire would become a laughingstock. The entire country would be covered in a shadow. After all, the seven luminary sword saint was too important to the country. But now, all the concealment and blocking were meaningless, because Empress did not hesitate to announce the news to the entire court. This prodigal old woman, after the initial shock, the saint officials all cursed in their minds. What a woman with long hair and short knowledge. The emperor asked her to attend the meeting. She must be out of her mind. But soon, they realized something else. They could not do anything to Empress, because she was the empress of the empire, the master of the harem. And Empress did not need to consider their thoughts. Because of the Shui Baochai incident more than a year ago, the empress' political reputation had suffered a devastating blow. The forces she had planted in the foreign court had been uprooted, and her friendliness with the foreign officials was infinitely close to zero. She and the foreign officials did not like each other to begin with, and they did not have any scruples when making trouble. Therefore, she could say whatever she wanted, because the mouth was on her body, and the officials could not do anything to her. No one dared to slap her or ask her to clamp the beak of a bird, because the only person who could do that, the emperor, was unconscious. Unconscious. Sun Lang's eyes became gloomy. The second chess piece, he thought. Empress was a troublemaker. As the emperor's wife, she could only rely on the emperor. She would be the most loyal follower of the emperor's will. She did not need any guarantees or promises, because Empress's identity was born because of the emperor. Empress would definitely stand with the emperor to protect their shared power. He looked at Empress, and Empress also looked at him, her eyes flickering with a cold gleam of complacency. It was obvious that all of this came from the emperor's instructions. Regardless of whether it was the proposal to visit the court and seek out talented people to enter the palace for treatment, or to make the matter of Ling Mu Li's assassination known to the entire court, it was all the emperor's idea. He had secretly instructed Empress to do it. Ling Mu Li was the sword saint of the nation, but he had brazenly assassinated the sovereign. This matter would definitely cause a huge wave, and the impact would be far-reaching. It was simply unimaginable. At that time, needless to say, there would be all kinds of turmoil and rumors. All of this meant that there would be a huge upheaval and turmoil, but the emperor wanted the court to fall into chaos. This speculation sounded extremely absurd, and no one would believe it. Because according to normal logic, Li Guangyuan, as the sovereign of this country, had the martial arts and prestige to defeat the sky demon. He had great control over the country and had great prestige in the court. He was not a weak sovereign who would be bullied by domineering officials. He was destined to leave his name in history and be spoken of by future generations. Why would such an emperor want his country to fall into chaos? But this was the truth. Only Sun Lang knew that the emperor had enormous ambitions and crazy plans. He saw his son and family as chess pieces. For the sake of his dream of immortality, he did not hesitate to kill meritorious officials and gamble with the entire country. He was already crazy, or it could be said that he was astonishingly calm. As long as he achieved his ambition and goal, he would have enough time and power to reorganize the country and even lead the empire to a higher level. Since this was the case, what did a short-term sacrifice count for? Was this his purpose in pushing Empress out? Pretending to be unconscious after being assassinated was him hiding behind the scenes. Some things were done by Empress. It was obviously more convenient because Empress was, in essence, just listening to politics from behind the curtain. Some things, if Empress did them, the officials could do nothing but curse her in their hearts. But if these things were done by the emperor himself, the officials could jump up and point at the emperor's nose and curse him. And now, the crux of the problem was Empress had exposed the identity of the criminal who tried to assassinate the emperor. What was her next step? Sun Lang's eyes flashed. As he thought, he looked around. As the head of the military officials, he was at the front of the military class. No matter whether it was beside him or across from him, he was the most powerful official in the country. He was the true participant and controller of the court. But at this time, as he looked around, he saw that although the old foxes' faces were gloomy, they still did not say a word and looked in his direction. Mother Fastris Kerr, this bunch of old things. Sun Lang scolded in his heart. Sometimes it was not good to be in the limelight too much. Just like now, everyone was used to Sun Lang charging and breaking through enemy lines. Whether it was against the emperor or against Empress, in the eyes of the public, Shinsei General Sun Lang was a little teddy bear who was not afraid of anything. There was nothing he did not dare to say. Since this was the case, there was no need for him to stand up for himself. He could just wait for him to jump out and curse Empress. That was probably what everyone was thinking. Damn it, there was not even a single person who came out to take a look. Sun Lang thought for a moment, then transmitted his voice to His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. As the saying goes, there is always a disciple to serve. Go Jiansheng. Another day, he would find an excuse to promote Pei Ju and Wang Gui so that they could be cannon fodder in the court. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince instinctively hesitated. After all, it was easier to change mountains and rivers than to change a person's nature. He still had not changed his timid personality, and he had not developed the domineering aura of an emperor. His combat strength was very worrying. He said weakly, "Mother, this matter involves a lot of people. Before the truth is revealed, before he could finish, Empress scolded him. After all, it was only right for a mother to curse her son. As Empress, if she angrily scolded the crown prince, no one in the court could do anything about it. She said fiercely, "Before the truth is revealed? Do you mean that Ling Yuli is not the murderer? You saw your father's injuries with your own eyes. Other than the wood's sacred sword, what other imperial army could inflict such a wound? Other than the 7 luminary sword saint, who else could break into the palace, brazenly carry out an assassination, and escape from the joint attack of the imperial house's high priests?" His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince stammered, but, Empress said coldly, "Tell me, other than the sword saint himself, who else could wield the 7 luminary sword?" As soon as she said this, many people's gazes gathered on Sun Lang. Putting aside the fact that General Shinsei was recognized by the late emperor as the successor of the Mars Sword Saint, there were many suspicious points. There were also rumors that Bai Yue's gold sacred sword was also in his hands. Moreover, after the initial shock, many people came back to their senses. Ling Yuli assassinated the emperor. But the problem was the wood sacred sword had already died in the Great Desolate Mountains. This was officially announced as one of the 3 sword saints who had died in the Great Desolate Mountains. Thinking about it carefully, Everyone's mood became very strange because this matter was also very strange. Because from beginning to end, it seemed to have something to do with Sunlang. Everyone remembered that night 5 or 6 days ago, the broadcast that disturbed everyone's sleep. Everyone heard General Shunsei shout out the Wood Sacred Sword Saint's name and was shocked that he was still alive. Moreover, he caused a huge ruckus in the Chronos Sword Palace, involved the Imperial Palace, and made Baoshiran vomit blood. In other words, Sun Lang might be the first witness to Ling Muli's resurrection. This identity was too strange. And even more strange, back to the time of the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountains. The official announcement that the Wood Sacred Sword Saint had died in the Great Desolate Mountains did not know the truth. Because no one had personally participated in the battle, no one had seen the Sword Saint die. But Sun Lang had most likely seen it, because everyone knew what had happened in the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountains. That unqualified fire Sacred Sword Saint, Qi Yinyan, had been yelling every day that Sun Lang had killed his elder brother. This matter had long been circulating in the imperial capital. Just how many of the soldiers who had died in the Great Desolate Mountains had died at Sun Lang's hands was a question that everyone wanted to know but did not dare to ponder deeply. After all, politics was all about pretending to be ignorant. Everyone could just muddle through it. There was no need to get to the bottom of it. How ugly would it be to flip the table? The soldiers who had died in the Great Desolate Mountains were all heroes who had fought to the death against the Sky Demon. Everyone was a hero. Who would be so bored as to investigate the so-called truth? How many people would that offend? The so-called truth of the Great Desolate Mountains was deliberately ignored and downplayed by everyone. But in the case of the Emperor's assassination, Ling Muli, who should have died in battle, had reappeared, bringing the old matter of the Great Desolate Mountains to the surface. Everyone had to face this awkward problem. Because the one who had led all of this was the seemingly foolish and stubborn Empress, who did not understand anything. Empress seemed to have noticed everyone's gazes. Her eyes lit up as if she had just discovered Sun Lang. Cold light flickered in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a cold smile. However, she put on an act and asked, if I remember correctly, that traitor Ling Muli was said to have died in the Great Desolate Mountains. Why did he suddenly reappear recently and commit the grave crime of assassinating the Emperor? Everyone was silent. Everyone also wanted to know what was going on. Empress waited for a moment, then asked, General Shunsei, you are a pillar of the Imperial Court, a general of Tianyuan, and also one of the soldiers who survived the Great Desolate Mountains. If I remember correctly, you went missing on the battlefield. For the past 2 years, you have been missing without a trace. The Imperial Court also believes that you have died. It is only recently that you have reappeared, just like that traitor Ling Muli. Of course, I do not mean to suspect you, Sun Lang said coldly. But Empress seems to have the word suspicion written on your face. When these words came out, no matter what everyone was thinking, they all laughed secretly. No matter what, listening to Sun Lang speak was interesting. The Imperial Court was like a crosstalk club. Empress said lightly, General, you are joking. However, I have some doubts in my heart. After all, there are not many survivors in the Great Desolate Mountains. Why did Ling Muli come back from the dead? And why did he do such a crazy thing? I think the source of all of this has to be traced back to the Battle of the Great Desolate Mountains. So I have to ask someone who personally experienced the battle. She asked, General, what did Ling Muli do in the Great Desolate Mountains? Did he have any abnormal behavior? Did you see him die in battle with your own eyes? Sun Lang frowned and said, Empress, are you interrogating me? Empress said calmly, I don't dare. I'm just a woman. I should be in the inner palace. But the Emperor entrusted me with the responsibility of listening to the state affairs. Out of concern for His Majesty and the fulfillment of my duty, I would like to ask General a few questions. This is an important matter of the country, more important than the Tsang Mountains. General, please do not hesitate to answer. Sun Lang replied, This is an important matter of the country, and it is also a secret of the country. It should not be discussed in such an occasion. After all, There are too many people. Just like how Empress announced Ling Yuli's identity as an assassin, it is really inappropriate. Not only will it alert the enemy, it will also cause people's hearts to be shaken, and it will cause your friends to be surprised. Empress raised her eyebrows and said, I am just a woman. I don't know the rules of the imperial court. How can a man be so cautious when discussing politics? He is even more careful than us girls embroidering. She shook her head and continued, I only know that the Empire is a powerful country in martial arts. The strongest in the world is not a lie. There are many heroes in outstanding martial arts. For such a country, the assassination of the emperor is a great shame. Why do they have to hide the identity of a murderer? Why do they have to be so careful? The path of martial arts is supposed to advance bravely and courageously, but the kingdom of martial arts has to act cautiously and cautiously, afraid of this and that. It seems a bit strange. Could it be that in this vast world, is there anything that can make us fear? She was not wrong. Not only was she not wrong, but she was also a little politically correct. Sun Lang was just about to speak when Empress said, but in any case, I have already said it. The past cannot be traced back. General, please answer my question. This is the imperial court. It is the place where the officials discuss politics. As for the many people, I believe that the officials are all officials who abide by their duties and will not speak carelessly. I could trust them, but General, can't you trust them? Sun Lang looked at her and said slowly, I'm not the only one who survived in the Great Barren Mountain. I know. There are also 2 sword saints, Sun and Moon. After that, Empress took out a small booklet from her sleeve. I have asked the 2 sword saints who were close to the royal family yesterday. The 2 sword saints were not in the same army as Ling Yuli when they were divided in the Great Barren Mountain. According to them, the wood sword saint was holding the line under the commander of war. So, it seems that I can only ask General. She stared at Sun Lang and repeated the question just now. Then, General Shunsei, please tell us what Ling Yuli did that day in the Great Barren Mountain. Is he really dead? The air froze. Everyone was silent. Under everyone's gaze, Sun Lang was silent for a moment and said lightly, he is dead. Empress frowned and said, General, you saw it with your own eyes? No. Sun Lang slowly raised his head and looked directly at Empress of the Empire. He said word by word, I killed him with my own hands. Chapter 1071. I killed her with my own hands. Sun Lang calmly corrected Empress. It was very peaceful. For a moment, the Golden Hall was silent, as if time had stopped. Everyone's eyes went blank for a moment. Maybe their brains didn't process this information well, or maybe they thought they were hallucinating. In short, they were caught off guard. No one had expected Sun Lang to say such words. The next moment, someone swallowed a mouthful of saliva and made a slight noise. Time continued to flow forward, but the ministers of the empire were still stiff like statues, not moving at all. An indescribable emotion struck their hearts. He actually said it out loud. How could this be? Why? The first-rank ministers around Sun Lang almost uniformly took a step back. These highest-ranking ministers of the empire were also rare experts in the world. At this moment, their bodies were tense, and their vigorous yuan qi involuntarily began to circulate. They were on guard against any possible actions of General Shinsei. Everyone was looking at him, and a ridiculous thought flashed through their minds. This guy, could it be that he was going to fall out with him here? Sun Lang tilted his head slightly and looked at the military officials beside him. The Grand Tutor of Martial Arts, the head of Army Ruan Lu, and the Minister of War were all on high alert. The power of the Imperial Army was surging in their bodies. When he looked outside, he saw that all the civil and military officials were holding their breaths. He could even see the sweat on many of their foreheads. 2 years ago, there was a huge lie in this country. Some people made up this lie, and the rest just watched. Now, the curtain of the lie was in the hands of the people who should have been dead long ago. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. They had long been used to this lie. It was like being used to sin, hypocrisy, wrong, and unfairness. This was such a world. Fortunately, I already knew. Sun Lang's lips curled into a sneer as he asked calmly, "What are you afraid of, Sun?" Sun Lang, Empress, who was standing on the royal steps and in front of the dragon throne, finally woke up from her shock and confusion. The Emperor was unconscious, and the Empress was in charge. She represented her husband, the supreme imperial power. She snapped, "What did you say? Do you know what you're saying?" Sun Lang turned his head and looked at the high and mighty Empress. There was not a shred of respect or reverence in his eyes, only a cold gaze and faint mockery. His calm and clear words echoed in the court. If there were no accidents, they would become the neat handwriting of a historian and be left in the history of this country. "What is your Highness Empress afraid of? Did I not make myself clear enough? Then make it clearer. That day in the great desolate mountain, I used my finger as a sword to break Lingmu Li's sword art of absorption and the Jimu longevity, true qi. I severed his connection with the sword of Jupiter and then broke his heart meridian with one palm." Sun Lang calmly recounted the events of that year, as if it had nothing to do with him. It was as if the person he killed was not the world-renowned seven luminary sword saint, but a nobody. The sword of Jupiter's strength lies in its virtuous cultivation, and its ability to heal is unparalleled in the world. I know Lingmu Li's life-saving ability very well, so I was even more ruthless. The fatal wound was on his chest, and his true qi broke his 8 extraordinary meridians, overturned 12 floors, broke his spine, and shattered his head. Even the gods would not be able to save him. Apart from that, I left his corpse intact with all his injuries inside, leaving some dignity for the Sword Saint and the Imperial Empire. Still gazing at Empress, he said indifferently, "I've finished." Does Empress understand this time? Being stared at by Sun Lang's emotionless eyes, Empress immediately felt a chill run up her spine and into her head. She could not help but take a step back. Even the most honorable woman was still a lofty figure in the imperial palace. When had she ever seen a peerless martial artist who had killed his way out of the blood sea of Tianyuan? She thought of the rumors about Sun Lang, his past, and the rumors about the great desolate mountain. Although the emperor was her husband, she knew very little about this greatest scandal and secret of the imperial empire. It was only today that Empress finally understood how frightening an enemy was that the emperor could not eat or sleep in peace. At this very moment, in the imperial palace, in front of all the civil and military officials, the survivor of the great desolate mountain frankly recounted what had happened at that time. In an extremely calm tone, he recounted what he had done. He had killed a 7 luminary sword saint, who was the ultimate power of the imperial empire. More importantly, he seemed to no longer hide or conceal it. The well-known lie, the fig leaf that glossed over the piece, seemed to have been pulled down by him. He had placed the ugly truth and shocking facts under the light of day. How could he dare to do this? How could he dare to do this? Fear arose from her heart. Everything that had happened before her eyes had already exceeded her expectations. Empress had a meticulous mind and an intelligent mind. She had lived in the imperial palace for a long time and was used to seeing all the people in the imperial palace. She believed that she could see through people's hearts. She had made many plans, imagined Sun Lang's mode of action, imagined his countermeasures. But she had not thought of this point. Strategizing on paper was not the same as going into battle. Scheming in the imperial palace was not the same as breaking through the enemy's formation. She had racked her brains to set up an ancient chi formation that was interlocking, reciprocating, and containing countless changes. Just as she was waiting for the enemy to come and fight, she saw the enemy wave a banner. The mountains and plains rumbled with the sound of horses stampeding. Wave after wave of heavy cavalry lined up like sharp arrows and pressed down on her from all directions. What did you want to do? At this moment, facing Sun Lang's cold eyes, Empress had a thought that flashed through her mind for no reason. Could it be that this traitor dared to risk universal condemnation and assassinate her on the spot? When she thought of this, the panic in her heart grew. In her eyes, Sun Lang had become a lunatic who did not act according to common sense. Everything he did was normal. She wanted to call for people to protect her, but Sun Lang had not yet acted. She saw the important ministers of the imperial court around Sun Lang. These outstanding heroes of the age, who had also made outstanding contributions, gave her courage and confidence. In any case, these people were the ministers of the Empress of Earth. They would not sit by and watch Sun Lang commit a great crime. After all, she was Empress. In her panic, she still maintained the dignity of the Empress and sternly said, "Sun Lang, the national affairs are not for you to speak carelessly. You have admitted the great crime of murdering the Sword Saint in public. Do you want to rebel in public, or do you want to confess your crimes?" Sun Lang said coldly, "Everyone in the world knows that I have an iron heart. How can I rebel? I am innocent. Why should I confess my crimes? Empress has attacked me time and time again out of personal grudges. You have failed to distinguish between public and private affairs. You have suppressed the loyal ministers and chilled the hearts of the people in the world." Empress was a bit panicked at first, but when she found that Sun Lang did not take action directly, she became braver. When she heard Sun Lang talk about personal grudges, she was enraged. Without thinking, she said angrily, "What? Do you mean that you have made a great contribution by killing the 7 luminary Sword Saint?" To her surprise, Sun Lang nodded solemnly and said, "For what I see now, Ling Muli is clearly a great criminal who tried to assassinate the emperor. I killed him in the great desolate mountain as a precaution. I was able to see through people's hearts. Although I did not solve the problem, I have made a great contribution in foresight. I should be rewarded." He was simply twisting words and forcing logic. Empress shouted, "Nonsense! Did you know that Ling Muli was going to assassinate the emperor 2 years later when you were in the great desolate mountain 2 years ago?" "I did not." "Then it is a great crime to kill the protector Sword Saint for no reason." "Not necessarily." Sun Lang raised his voice a bit. Empress claimed that I had committed a great crime of killing the protector Sword Saint the moment she heard that I had killed Ling Muli. But she did not ask me why I did it. Instead, she regarded the great general as a great traitor without asking. Is this the position and attitude of Her Majesty Empress? Empress's face suddenly changed after hearing that. She finally realized that she had fallen into Sun Lang's rhythm. She wanted to interrupt Sun Lang's speech, but how could General Shansei give her the chance? "I killed Ling Muli in the great desolate mountain because I was defending myself. Ling Muli was harboring evil intentions and suddenly attacked me ruthlessly. He tried to assassinate a great general in the army and killed his comrade. He should be executed according to the military law and according to the law of the country." Sun Lang stepped out and looked down at the civil and military officials in the court. Since Her Majesty Empress wants to do things in an upright manner and says that she can trust all the civil and military officials in the court, then Sun Lang has nothing to hide. So that everyone can know, Sun Lang shouted. Ling Muli said it himself. He was ordered by His Majesty to kill me. If the previous sentence, "killed with his own hands," was an atomic bomb, then this one was a hydrogen bomb. What the F***CK? What the F***CK? The sound of people gasping could be heard one after another. Many of the officials in Tucson were scared silly. This was a scene that had never been seen in the country for hundreds of years. An important minister accused the emperor in front of the court. Sun Lang, Her Majesty Empress screamed. "How can you slander the emperor in the Golden Palace?" Sun Lang said sternly, "I only said that Ling Muli said that he was a traitor. Can you believe it? Does Her Majesty think that her husband is the kind of tyrant who would murder loyal officials and put away the bow after the birds are done? For Her Majesty to say this, isn't she a little too guilty?" Empress's heart was hit hard again. She looked at Sun Lang and found that his eyes were full of disdain and ridicule, as if he was laughing at her guilty conscience and her incompetence. Looking around at the officials in the hall, everyone had a strange look in their eyes. At this moment, a trace of understanding flashed through her mind. It turned out that the outer court was 100 times, 1,000 times more hypocritical than the inner court. Everyone knew the truth, but no one said it. They were just watching a joke. She said hatefully, "I didn't." Sun Lang, you clearly know that these are the words of a traitor, but you still said it in the Golden Palace. You have ulterior motives. Sun Lang shouted, "I'm following Empress's orders to talk about the matters of the Great Desolate Mountain. It was Her Majesty who forced me again and again, ordering me to talk about the past in detail. Now you're blaming me, Her Majesty. Doesn't your face hurt?" Empress screamed, "Impudent!" When Quan Fu stepped out from the crowd and said loudly, "Sun Lang, don't be rude to Empress." Sun Lang transformed into a sacred sword, and Inghor rolled up the flames of the phoenix. He pointed the sword at Wen Quan Fu and said coldly, "My report to the Empress on Ling Muli's matters is to catch up with what happened in the past, and also to talk about what happened in the future. This court meeting is about Ling Muli's assassination of the Emperor and the subsequent plans of the rebels. Since it has started, there must be a conclusion. Whoever dares to interrupt and change the topic will be Ling Muli's accomplice." The undisguised killing intent was the most powerful warning. If he was killed by Sun Lang here, there wouldn't be anyone to reason with. Then let's continue. With a sword in hand, Sun Lang took a step forward and said, "Back in the Great Desolate Mountain, I was ambushed by Ling Muli. Before that traitor died, he said that it was Your Majesty who sent him here. Naturally, I didn't believe him, but who else would be able to order a sword saint to assassinate a great general?" Empress said coldly, "In other words, you're still suspecting His Majesty?" Sun Lang said proudly, "I'd like to ask Her Majesty Empress, if the person who ordered Ling Muli wasn't His Majesty, how could the mastermind make a sword saint bow down to him? Does such a person really exist in the Empire? If he really exists, that person must have great strength and unspeakable plans." He didn't wait for Empress to speak and continued, "I've already killed Ling Muli. I'm sure that I've destroyed all of his vitality. Later on, the Empire also announced his death, which can prove my words. However, Ling Muli came back to life recently, which involves 3 questions. Firstly, how did he come back to life? Secondly, why did the wood innate sacred sword appear in his hands?" Sun Lang turned to look at the officials and said with a deep voice, "Also, the person who came back to life, who assassinated the Emperor, who possesses the power of the wood innate sacred sword, and who has the same appearance as Ling Muli, is that traitor really Ling Muli himself?" His tone was very calm, and there wasn't any intense fluctuation in it. However, it contained a deep chill. Everyone who heard it couldn't help but shudder. "This is a problem that has been bothering me," Sun Lang asked, as if he was asking everyone, but also asking himself, Who is it? Who is it? Who is it that can make a sword saint bow down to him? Who is it that wants to kill me? Who revived Ling Muli? Who ordered him to assassinate the Emperor? Who is it that can command a sword saint? Who is it?" Everyone's expression changed. They understood the meaning behind Sun Lang's words. Or perhaps they thought that they understood it. Because many people guessed that the Emperor had directed and acted out this trick of self-injury. Then, according to Sun Lang's words, how did the Emperor do it? If Ling Muli had really died at the hands of Sun Lang in the Great Desolate Mountain, then how did he come back to life? As for the possibility that Sun Lang mentioned, don't joke around. Other than the Emperor, who else could order the 7 luminaries' sacred sword? Who else could make Ling Muli regain control of the sacred sword without anyone knowing? Empress also understood. She said in a Sun Ran tone, "Listening to your words, you are still hinting at His Majesty." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "Empress is wrongly accusing someone again. This official has no intention of hinting at His Majesty." Empress said coldly, "Is that so?" "Yes, I never speak in secret, although it is undeniable that His Majesty is indeed suspicious. For example, he directed and acted out the trick of self-injury and ordered Ling Muli to assassinate me. Even the assassination of me in the Great Desolate Mountain of Wood Luminaries was also instructed by His Majesty." Thinking about it this way, it actually makes sense, but as a subject, it is really not good to suspect His Majesty. I also believe in His Majesty's character, and I really don't want to suspect him. Empress said coldly. "If it is really His Majesty who did it, what do you want?" "This is what I want to say." Sun Lang smiled brightly. "If all this is really His Majesty's doing." He shook the sacred sword, and the sword hummed clearly. "Then change the Emperor." Chapter 1072. Then let's change the Emperor. His tone was so matter-of-fact. Even the historian who had always been writing without a change in expression and claimed to be eternally neutral and objective raised his head in shock. From a certain perspective, Sun Lang could be considered the first person to do so in the last several hundred years. He had done many things that his predecessors had never done, said many things that his predecessors had never dared to say. He had confessed to killing the Sword Saint, accused the Emperor of being a suspect, and even said that he wanted to depose the Emperor. Not even the most domineering of officials in all the dynasties of the later Earth had been so arrogant. But he had done it. In front of all the civil and military officials, the young general of the Empire gripped the sacred sword and looked around with disdain, treating the majesty of imperial authority as nothing. There was no arrogance on his face, no smug smile, no conceited arrogance. Sun Lang only stood there, his lips slightly pursed, his eyes gentle but firm. He faced Empress on the imperial steps, faced the dragon throne, faced the supreme imperial authority that had existed for 1,000 years, and left his back to all the officials. Thus, everyone suddenly had an epiphany, or rather, a sense of reality. The person in front of them had walked out of the great desolate mountain. He had spent more than 2 years to come here, to come to the highest sacred palace of the country, to come to the chessboard that controlled the whole world. He wanted an answer, a result, a justice. There was some truth in the saying that justice was in the hearts of the people, because justice truly was in the hearts of the people. Even if they did not dare to speak it out, even if they chose to remain silent due to various considerations, justice truly existed objectively in the hearts of everyone. This was because everyone had a conscience, everyone knew right and wrong. It was just that they did not know how to say it or do it. But in the end, they would be touched. Just like now. Everyone stared at Sun Lang's back, their minds swaying. No one was born a lowly being, and no official felt that a subject was destined to submit to the whims of the sovereign, unable to resist. Sun Lang was a subject, and they were also subjects. Sun Lang had rendered great service to the empire, and they had also worked their hearts out for the empire. When Sun Lang had been plotted against by the sovereign in the great desolate mountains, they had also felt sorrow and empathy. Now, the commander of war from 2 years ago had stepped into the hall of government as a subject and openly declared war against the sovereign who played with power. This had undoubtedly tugged at the heartstrings of many people. A sovereign could plot against a subject could plot against a sovereign. A debt had to be paid with money, a life for a crime. A crime? No one was an exception. It had been less than 2 years since the war, and many people's blood. At this moment, they had tacitly agreed to maintain their silence. No one jumped out to criticize Sun Lang for his insanity, lack of manners, and daring. Perhaps they had misgivings and were unwilling to come out and hit Sun Lang's muzzle. Or perhaps they were touched and were moved by Sun Lang's experience and persistence. None of this was important. What was important was that the imperial power had been torn apart and stood opposite the power of the subjects. Empress was flustered. The so-called mother of the world was only in charge of a small area in the imperial palace, thousands of eunuchs, palace maids, and dozens of concubines. This was the scope of her power. How could such a mother of the nation suppress the heroes of the world's most powerful country? Proud soldiers and valiant generals, virtuous and capable subjects. Which one of them was easy to deal with? She sternly said, "Sun Lang, a subject talking about dethroning the emperor. This is treason and heresy." Sun Lang gave tit for tat, boldly saying, "If His Majesty is innocent, then where does dethroning the emperor come from? If all of this was done by the emperor, then what's wrong with dethroning the emperor? Murdering a meritorious subject, scheming insidiously, and playing tricks. If all of this is related to His Majesty, then his actions are not the actions of a wise emperor. How can such a tyrant serve the ancestral temple and protect the country? How can such an emperor be accepted by the people? The emperor guards the world and treats his subjects with benevolence and generosity. This is his power and duty. If his virtue is not worthy of the throne, then change to a better one. Empress shrieked, "His Majesty guards the people and is the Son of Heaven. As a subject, you should be loyal to him. When the emperor makes mistakes, you should do your best to persuade him. As a subject, how can you meddle in the replacement of the throne?" Sun Lang violently shouted, "If all of this was done by His Majesty, then he is beyond redemption. If there are officials without talent or virtue, the emperor can punish them. However, if the emperor is cruel and tyrannical, muddle-headed, we officials should also follow the will of the people and punish this unfilial son on behalf of the heavens." The ministers cherish their feathers and are not willing to lose the loyalty of the emperor and his subjects. I, Sun Lang, am heartless and do this on behalf of the heavens. This is my wish and my duty. You said I dethroned the emperor, but if the emperor is really immoral and immoral, then I will have a taste of this dethroning. What can you do? Empress sternly said, "Sun Lang, are you trying to rebel?" General Shansei coldly snorted, "As the mother of the nation, do you only know how to bluff and put labels on people? Since I am empress, I should live in the depths of the palace, read scriptures and play, be worshipped by the eunuchs and palace maids every day, listen to the flattery of the concubines and concubines, and laugh at the schemes of the palace from high above. This is the life that Her Majesty should live. She should not scream and make a scene in the imperial court and be despised by the ministers, weakening the prestige of the imperial family for no reason." Empress was mad with anger. Sun Lang saw the anger and killing intent in her eyes and said as if nothing had happened, "Her Majesty Empress wants to hit me again. Sirs, please stop her. I have never been gentle with my attacks. Don't lose the dignity of the imperial family." This sentence was like a firecracker exploding. Her Majesty Empress's rationality was gradually evaporating. She looked at the silent civil and military officials in the imperial court and finally experienced firsthand the difficulties of being a ruler. This imperial court was full of wolves and dogs. Everyone was thinking about their own land, and there was not a single loyal person. She looked around and screamed, "Where are the armed attendants? Come with me and take down this traitor." Sun Lang did not raise his holy sword and remain calm. He did not even raise his eyelids. "I will let Her Majesty know that when this subject was slaughtering demons on the Tianyuan battlefield and reaping countless rewards, Her Majesty was still embroidering in the palace. I was once in charge of all the military forces in the world and was promoted to Shunsei with the title of General of Tianyuan, a first-grade military achievement. If you want to convict me of a crime, not only do you have to hold an imperial court meeting, you also have to worship the ancestral temple and report it to the previous emperors. This is not something that a mere woman in the imperial court can decide at will. This is the rule of the empire. Do you understand?" The calmer he was, the more furious Empress became. The dignified empress of the empire was like an ordinary shrew at this moment. She originally wanted to use her status as a woman to make her opponent retreat, but she did not expect that the other party would not fall for this trick. The shrew scolding method that she was so proud of was useless. Her womanly instincts made her change her tactics. She was so angry that her eyes turned red and tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked at the courtiers and shouted, "You are all courtiers appointed by His Majesty. Are you going to watch this traitor humiliate a woman like me?" Without waiting for anyone to answer, Sun Lang's tone turned cold. "I am warning Her Majesty for the last time. As the Empress of the Empire, every word and action of hers represents the Empire. Do not make irresponsible remarks and insult the courtiers of the Empire. There is no basis and no evidence. Why do you have to call me a traitor and a traitor?" Courtiers cannot be treated lightly. If you do not understand this principle, then let us discuss the matter of abolishing the Empress. The courtiers' hearts were numb. No matter what shocking words General Shunsei said, they would not be surprised. They only knew that what happened today was enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. Empress said sternly, "Courtiers, where is your integrity and loyalty?" Sun Lang is a courtier. In the imperial court, in front of all the courtiers, discussing the matter of abolishing the empress. Is this something that a courtier should do? I only see a domineering courtier covering the sky with one hand. As for the other courtiers, they do not dare to speak. Sun Lang slowly said, "Empress, you are of noble birth. You don't understand some of the principles of the human world. This subject will teach you a good lesson. The next time you ask for help, the target can't be a large group of people. It has to be precise to a certain person. Because when a person is in a group, his sense of responsibility and mission will be diluted. Everyone is waiting for someone else to take the lead. Secondly, Empress, I do not know if there's a problem with your understanding or if you are guilty. I have already made it very clear. If the matter of Lingmu Li is related to His Majesty, then it means that our emperor is guilty of murdering a courtier and plotting. We courtiers have to put the country first and abolish the empress. If His Majesty is innocent, then he is still our emperor. The relationship between the emperor and his courtiers is still the same as before. By the same token, if your Majesty has the dignity and bearing of the mother of the nation, respects the facts, respects the ministers, and respects the foreign ministers without being arrogant or condescending, then you're also the mother of the nation that we respect. If we respect you, why would we submit a memorial to depose you? Do you understand? If you believe in your husband, if you have self-respect and self-respect, then the matter of abolishing the empress is just a passing breeze. It will not affect you at all, so..." The serious expression on his face turned into a smile. "What are you guilty of? Calm down, calm down, calm down. Ben Gong's heart is already in a mess, so it can't be messed up anymore. Ben Gong can't be led by the nose by him." Empress took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. She kept recalling the conversation just now and tried hard to find a flaw in Sun Lang's words. She wanted to counterattack. She didn't want to be in such a difficult position. Yes, counterattack. This can't continue. If this continues, Ben Gong will become a laughingstock. Look at these courtiers. Their eyes are full of contempt and disdain. They must be laughing at Ben Gong in their hearts. They must be laughing that Ben Gong is unable to withstand a single blow from Sun Lang. This can't be allowed to happen. Sun Lang, with Ben Gong here, don't even think about threatening the imperial power. What abolishing the emperor? You're just a courtier. You must have the awareness and responsibility of a courtier. Courtiers like you are nothing but slaves of the imperial family, dogs of the imperial family. After being whipped by your master, you must not grimace. You must be docile. You must forget these things and continue to be obedient. Be obedient. This way, when your master remembers this matter, he will compensate you and reward you. This is how courtiers get along with the emperor. A rebellious bandit like you dares to bare your teeth at His Majesty. Sooner or later, your dog head will be chopped off. Her heart became colder and colder. She said, "In the end, the so-called Lingmu Li assassinating you and his confession before his death that His Majesty sent him to kill you are only your side of the story." Sun Lang did not refute this time. He nodded happily. Yes, this courtier thinks so too. His Majesty is a wise ruler through the ages. He is bright and upright. How can he be like those incapable tyrants in history who would throw away the bow after the birds are killed and cook the hounds after the hares are killed? Only a brainless, heartless idiot would do such a thing. This kind of person must be smashed to pieces and die without a burial place. Empress, don't you think so? Empress's face was cold. Empress, this courtier is asking you a question. Don't you think so? Under everyone's strange gazes, the empress shouted, "Enough! This empress is not interested in listening to your vulgar words. In the end, there is no evidence of what happened that day. You said that Lingmu Li suddenly attacked you, and you fought back. There is no witness. In this case, it is not impossible for this empress to say that you had bad intentions and killed Ling Mu Li. Sun Lang said in surprise. Empress, what are you thinking? If this courtier murdered Ling Mu Li, I will be happy to see him jump out of the coffin by himself. Why would I admit it? Empress did not even think. You murdered Ling Mu Li and found that he came back to life. In a panic, you naturally hid what you did that day, so you slandered Sun Lang's side. But he assassinated His Majesty. Who would believe him? This was awkward. Empress was speechless for a moment. Her mind was in a mess because of Sun Lang. After all, he drew too much hatred, so she only focused on attacking Sun Lang. She did not expect to make such a fool of herself. What else do you have to say, Empress? Sun Lang said. If not, then it is this courtier's turn to speak. This courtier originally planned to investigate this matter carefully, but Empress asked me many times before, saying that there is no need to hide this matter from others and that Ling Mu Li's case should be solved in court. In this case, this courtier will speak. Since I have spoken, I have to do something. Ling Mu Li's case has become a top priority. Not only do we have to bring the assassin to justice, but we also have to find out the inside story of this case. More importantly, he looked around and said decisively, we have to find evidence, find out the truth, find a mastermind behind this, clear His Majesty of suspicion, and return innocence to our king. This concerns the reputation of the monarch, the stability of the country, and the integrity of the country. We must do our best. For this, we need to investigate everything thoroughly. First of all, we have to prove that His Majesty has nothing to do with this matter. I propose that the royal family and the foreign court form a joint investigation team and give them the highest investigation authority. They will open the internal court files, disclose the private property of the royal family, and investigate all the secret actions of His Majesty and the imperial palace. Chapter 1073. The dagger was revealed. After a fierce confrontation and a patient preparation, Sun Lang finally showed his fangs. Empress had stepped into the fatal trap of the best hunter in the Hoodoo Empire. If she was not careful, she would be ambushed from all sides. Empress is no match for Sun Lang at all. Is this a mistake on His Majesty's part? Many people had such thoughts in their minds. No matter what, this move of Sun Lang's could indeed be said to be fierce, and it struck right at the opponent's vital point. Moreover, it wasn't an unconventional move, but an open and above-board attack that caused the Empress to be unable to dodge. The banner was "Return the innocence to our monarch." But what he did was to force the royal family to open all the secrets for investigation. Then the question was, what if the emperor was not innocent? The result was unquestionable. Because in the court today, Sun Lang had already shouted the slogan of changing the emperor, which was almost equivalent to a declaration of war. If there was a chance, he would not be soft-hearted. Or rather, this was the result that he expected. This was the result that he foresaw. Looking at Sun Lang, who was standing in front of the palace and looking around calmly, the ministers had a thought at the same time. Of the 6 armies of Tianyuan, the commander of war had the highest winning rate. He never fought a battle that he was not sure of. Since he was so confident and calmly arranged for such a shocking attack, did it mean that he was already confident of winning? That was to say, His Majesty was really. Empress objected harshly. This is disobeying the emperor. Are you going to investigate your monarch in such a big way just because of this unbelievable rumor? Even if Ling Muley really said something like that, he was probably framing His Majesty. Now that His Majesty was assassinated, it is the best proof. As a minister, you should share the emperor's burden and avenge him. You should try your best to pursue and capture the criminal, instead of fighting for power and talking nonsense here while His Majesty is unconscious. If the so-called joint investigation team really searched the inner palace and read the top secrets of the royal family, where would the royal family put their face? From then on, the monarch's authority would be lower than the subject's authority. How could he let such a thing happen? Sun Lang smiled and said, Your Highness Empress, I truly believe in His Majesty. I am willing to believe that His Majesty is open and above board. and that he would not do such a muddle-headed and tyrannical thing as to murder a loyal subject after crossing the river. Otherwise, I would have raised the flag of rebellion long ago after the Great Desolate Mountain incident. Now that I am willing to return to the Imperium as an official, it is exactly the ultimate manifestation of trust and loyalty, isn't it? Now that they say they want to investigate, their original intention is to clear His Majesty's name. Empress said hatefully, "If you believe in His Majesty's innocence, why did you investigate him?" Sun Lang said indifferently, "I'm just afraid that some people won't accept it." At that time, Empress Dowager sternly said, "Your Majesty has guarded the world and defeated the Sky Demon. You are a wise ruler who will be remembered for all eternity. How could you do such foolish things? The dignified Son of Heaven shines with divine virtue, revered by all, open and above board. In this world, in the four seas, other than you, who else is not convinced? Who else is not convinced?" General Shunsei said softly, "There was a senior official who was loyal for 3 generations. Even in death, he did not regret it. However, he was suspected, used, ostracized, and sacrificed. Although he died, I am not convinced on his behalf. There was a hedonistic son of rich parents who had no talent and no virtue. He was greedy and lecherous, stupid and vulgar, and could not be trained. However, in one night, he was reborn and wielded the sacred fire sword. In the end, he died in front of me. I'm not speaking up for him, but the martial artists in this world practice hard every day in order to climb to the highest peak. They treat the 7 luminaries' sword saint as their ultimate goal in life. Although they have suffered untold hardships, they do not regret it. All of this is for an illusory opportunity to come into contact with the sacred fire sword. However, this opportunity was easily touched by a foolish person. I'm not convinced by the hard work, sweat, perseverance, and unyielding spirit of these martial artists. There's one more." Before he finished, Empress sneered and said, "In the end, you are the only one who is not convinced. That's not true." A loud shout resounded through the imperial court. Under everyone's surprised gaze, Capital Magistrate Baoshiran stepped out. He ignored the shocked gazes of the imperial court and said loudly, "I am not convinced either. Under the law, all living things are equal. This matter concerns the country's constitution and the country. Even the Emperor and the Son of Heaven cannot stay out of this matter. The suspicion of the Son of Heaven is not groundless." "Well said." Imperial Censor Wu Pongji stepped out and said loudly, "I'm not convinced either. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced either." Yin Song, Njua, Ma Shuring, Pan Mei, one by one they stood up. Their resolute shouts resounded throughout the Golden Hall. Their voices reverberated in all directions, shaking the hearts of the spectators. They were clearly just Sun Lang's accomplices and wings, and their agreement today was just a normal operation. But when everyone saw and heard it, they felt something different, because on the faces of Pongji and the others, there was a radiance. This was not a political group agreeing with their leader's decision. This was a group of people following their leader to do the right thing. They knew what they were doing. They firmly believed that they were doing the right thing, because since the beginning of the Tianyuan era, they had been fighting like this. Di Huaying looked at the fearless junior brother Bao who was standing upright. After a while, he laughed involuntarily. He stepped forward and said loudly, "Di Huaying of the Supreme Court is not convinced." At first, they were just Sun Lang's old subordinates. But the governor Bao Shiren, who was recognized as a gentleman, had swayed many people's thoughts. Just as he had promised before, the country's most upright and incorruptible official had used the reputation and credibility he had accumulated in his political career as a weight to tip the scales on Sun Lang's side. Di Huaying's statement made the spectators think of another problem. Both of them were disciples of Wu Ho. They could be seen as the inheritors of Wu Ho's political ideology. Did this mean many people's thoughts were swayed? Maybe they just needed an excuse to convince themselves. First, it was the 6th or 7th rank officials. They were young and hot-blooded, or they had no hope of promotion. In a moment of passion, they were willing to follow the general's tale and create a big news. Then it was the close old allies of Sun Lang during the war. And the smart people who were good at grasping opportunities, they had already seen some clues. Gamblers were never afraid of huge investments because it meant huge returns. There were more and more people who were not convinced. Empress's face was ashen. Amazing, General Shunsei. With one call, you have the power to overturn the court. Sun Lang calmly said, "This is called justice is in people's hearts. Don't laugh coldly. Empress, I'll say something you don't want to hear. Against you, I don't want to hurt you. There is no need for a group fight. To be honest, I did not expect him to jump out, but..." He turned his head and smiled. "This feeling is not bad." Many of the officials smiled, making the Empress's face even uglier. It was difficult to save the situation alone. She even regretted retreating. In such a passive situation, such a bad situation, such a strong enemy, how could she be Sun Lang's opponent by herself? "You let me do this, say this, but did you expect this result?" Sun Lang, as always, maintained the battle sense of a top general. He launched a fatal surprise attack at the enemy at the most suitable time. He calmly said, Empress, do you regret it? Who gave you this rotten idea to recruit capable people from all walks of life to treat His Majesty's injury? Who is the person you were waiting for?" Empress suddenly woke up. She saw Sun Lang's eyes that seemed to be able to see through everything. She saw the officials' thoughtful gazes. After all, she was the mother of the country. Although she had been defeated, her intelligence was still there. She knew that no matter what, she had to keep this secret. Otherwise, everything would be over. She sternly said, "Nonsense. His Majesty is seriously injured and unconscious. The imperial physicians are useless, and the imperial treasury is helpless. I care about my husband, my monarch, and want to recruit capable people to treat His Majesty's injury. Is there a problem? Who in the inner palace can order me to do this?" Sun Lang nodded repeatedly. "Yes, who in the Empire can make the 7 luminaries' sword saint work for them? It seems that my guess is correct. There is a terrifying monster hidden in the Empire. He has power and methods that surpass His Majesty's, and he can control everything." Empress said angrily, "Sun Lang, you don't have to be so eccentric. If you have something to say, just say it. Humph, I can see that you are just taking advantage of His Majesty's coma, so you can be arrogant and do whatever you want." Sun Lang said in surprise, "Look at what you're saying. It was you who took over the government while His Majesty was in a coma. Then you ignored the overall situation and publicly announced the assassination of the Emperor by Ling Mu Li. You also forced me to ask about what happened in the Great Bear Mountain. I had no choice but to tell you what happened that year. Of course, I have to take action. This secret has been exposed to the public. No matter what, I have to take action. Why are you scolding me again?" Empress couldn't argue with him at all. She could only say fiercely, "I can't control you. When His Majesty wakes up, he will definitely make you pay for what you did today." Sun Lang was not afraid at all. He nodded happily. Good. If what I did today can make His Majesty wake up faster, then my sacrifice will not be in vain. By the way, Empress, you have been clamoring to find someone outside to cure His Majesty. Do you know someone who can cure His Majesty?" This person's words are so hateful. Empress said angrily, "I don't know divination. How can I be so sure?" Sun Lang smiled and said, "Then we will see in the future." In a few words, he had smeared Empress's face and body with feces. With his outburst, things became very delicate. Once Empress recruited a capable doctor from outside to treat His Majesty would recover in the blink of an eye. That would confirm Sun Lang's words today. It would show that all of this was a script prepared by the Emperor, and the Emperor would be in a very awkward situation. Otherwise, His Majesty would have to continue lying in bed. Empress had been defeated several times. She knew that she was no match for Sun Lang. She was a tough person and didn't want to show weakness in front of Sun Lang. She continued with her last effort. "General Tensei, as the Empress of the Imperial family, You're also a first-ranked general of the dynasty. Are you going to sit by and watch as the reputation of the imperial family is covered in dust and allow foreign officials to run amok in the palace? Then she looked at Li Jiansheng and said, Crown Prince. As the Crown Prince, it was His Majesty who gave you this position of power. Are you going to sit by and watch as your father is humiliated? Empress didn't have a problem with this. The important thing was what the Crown Prince thought. Sun Lang looked at Li Jiansheng. As the saying went, it was easy to change mountains and rivers, but difficult to change one's nature. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince had been nagged by Pei Zhu and Wang Gui for many years. He had long since developed a difficulty in making choices and was very bad at making choices. Now, there was another multiple-choice question in front of him. It was much more difficult than the questions he had faced before. Moreover, he had to solve this question alone. His trusted aides, Pei Zhu and Wang Gui, were not by his side, so he couldn't get any hints. Oh, in any case, the result should be the same. Those two fellows would definitely have their own opinions, and each of them would have a point. The two of them would have opposing opinions, and they would never have reached a consensus. It was still up to him to make this decision. As the Crown Prince, he had already seen through the Emperor's plan to use him as a chess piece, so he had thrown himself into Sun Lang's arms. From this point of view, he was eager for this joint investigation team to be established. Then, Sun Lang would come out and make a big fuss, unearth countless pieces of ironclad evidence, kick his father off the throne, and let him, Li Jiansheng, succeed the throne. This was undoubtedly a very good development. But at the same time, he was also afraid and hesitant, because Sun Lang's performance had been too forceful, and once this so-called joint investigation team was established, it would mean that the power of the ministers had suppressed the power of the monarch for the first time. With the ministers jointly investigating the emperor's secret actions, if there were any illegal or immoral acts, the removal of the throne would be right in front of them. How lawless was this? Politics was like this. As long as something unprecedented happened once, it would become a tradition, and there would be a second time to copy it. Then the question was, if there was a second time, who would bear the brunt of it? This concerned Li Jiansheng's fundamental interests, so he felt hesitant. After all, Li Jiansheng was this kind of person. Empress also noticed the Crown Prince's strange behavior. She turned her head and looked at Sun Lang with a half-smile. The person you chose isn't much either. Sun Lang sneered. First of all, Empress, you have to understand that we have no intention of disrespecting the imperial power. Just like this joint investigation team, the leader must be His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. When we enter the inner palace to search, we will also be under the Crown Prince's permission and full supervision. Even the management and leadership of the Imperial Treasury, the Inner Palace, and the secret organizations under His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince can first organize and reorganize, and then we will investigate. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince's eyes lit up. Even without Pei Zhu and Wang Gui's reminders, he already knew what to do. He bowed abruptly and said, "Don't worry, Mother. I will definitely not disgrace the Imperial family and father. As for the other members of the joint investigation team, they must include the outstanding talents of the Imperial family, such as Her Imperial Highness Empress. They must also include the various factions in the Imperial Court. They must be fair and just like what Her Imperial Highness Empress advocated, open and above board. There is nothing that cannot be said to others, and all the results of the investigation must be announced to the Imperial Court so that everyone can see and hear." Empress shouted, "I don't agree." "I heard." Sun Lang nodded, then turned around and asked the officials, "Who else?" "You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.